We'll call the meeting to order. And Jillian, come on down.
And Jillian has added images to the file. Sorry.
Applications apart. And this is also.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was the application that we looked at last time. And there are some questions that I think Jillian has answered them.
Oh, I drew you some cartoon drawings, I don't know.
This is like incredible rendering.
Well, Photoshop.
No, you're supposed to say, yeah, it took me
Days.
days
Oh,
of
so it-
agonizing work.
That's this little, and that other piece, let me see, kind of bumped out there.
Oh, on
So-
this side where the railroad ties are failing too.
Yeah.
Over here.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize
Oh,
that
the-
was the libraries. I thought that was the other house.
Oh, no, it's unfortunately, like that corner, that's that corner.
Yeah. Okay. I just didn't realize the property line went that
Oh,
far.
okay.
Okay, does anybody have any questions concerning the application?
So it's not replacing it exactly in the same position, it's
It might be a little bit more on our property.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
that there's a space for some planting.
We're gonna backfill behind it because they're really afraid to remove those railroad ties without putting the wall in first because it's gonna compromise the sidewalk and everything else, so.
Right,
So we're gonna put that in, push it back as far as we can, remove and backfill, and then we're putting some plants on the other side. We have some shrubbery down the other end, by where the Kapors are building their house, but we'd like to continue because we have problems sometimes with kids loitering there. And if they're on my side of the property, it's kinda easier to deal with than if they're on the sidewalk.
Well, anything right now they just dive off the side of that
And
retaining
it's
wall. So
Dangerous.
Yeah.
It's so
Um,
dangerous right now.
the tree is not our issue, but I'm just
No.
curious. What
He's gonna have to try to go in front of that tree.
So it's gonna come
Mhm.
forward of the
Yeah,
tree.
that tree's not ours.
the question is, how's the tree gonna push your wall?
Right, you might have to push in towards our property a little bit.
That's over
Yep,
here, right?
yep, mhm.
Well, I think it's a great improvement over what's there now.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it,
yeah, what we
you
have
know,
now is-
I don't love this
I don't either.
cast stone.
I don't either, I'd love
But-
to put a nice brick wall, but we can't afford it.
Well, but
well,
given
there's two
options,
there's two options on
Yeah.
the stone.
Yep,
Mhm.
yeah, and they haven't come down to decide exactly, we wanna go with the smallest and probably like a gray cobblestone-y looking, that we can have, so. I think the smallest block that we could get, I think is like 8 inches, so, and then the top, the cap is 6 inches.
and also we have,
Mhm.
this is in the local area, right, on this back. Let me see. Garden, church, Israel. No, you're a national, but we do have precedent for this type of wall in an institutional, well, not institutional, but
Yeah, it's
multi-tenant
scoped out.
setting, well, at Butterfield,
Yeah,
which
I
is the
scoped it out,
district.
I like it, because I thought I was gonna get a fight on it, but, we have to fix it, and we can't afford to do anything else.
So you prefer this one?
Mm-hmm,
One
Mm-hmm,
of two?
yep. At the time I sent an application, though, the board hadn't made those decisions, so that's why that other one is included, I probably wouldn't have included it.
But will it still be more random
Yep.
sizing? It won't all be the same size block?
No, we're trying to make it look more, cobblestone,
Stone.
nice and wool, yeah. As much as you can, and like I said, some of it, and it depends on the height of my ground, he's gonna go into the ground to try to keep it as low as, because I don't want a high wall there.
So the difference seems to be that the cobblestone versus the ledge stone, the cobblestone is a little softer at the edges. So it looks more like an older,
Yeah,
you know, like a worn wall is,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it looks more like concrete than the other one.
that's sort of where my head is going.
Well, you gotta remember, I also brightened this and colored it, so don't please go by my,
No,
cartoon
I'm
drawing.
going by the,
Okay.
No, yeah, I'm looking at this.
No. Do you guys deal with color though?
no.
Oh, I wasn't commenting on the color,
Okay.
I was commenting more on the texture and the sort of angularity of the lines. That this ledge stone looks more actually stone-like. I mean, this sort of looks,
Yeah, the
more
ledge- the
processed
ledge
and
stone is-
cast
The ledge
than-
stone is more random in sizing than
Mm-hmm.
this, which is kind of more,
Well, whichever one they get to look, that they feel, they haven't sat down with Ready Rock and, well, actually, they have some concrete and picked out the final, you know, we just got prices for it.
go ahead, Al.
Just out of curiosity, it says each 1-ton block features the appearance of 6 smaller blocks. You know, are these,
Let me see. Yeah, she actually did quote us with the limestone, I'm sorry, that is what we got quoted.
The ledge stone?
The ledge stone.
Oh, no, it says limestone,
Ledge stone is this one, and cobblestone is the other one.
oh, so you're getting real stone.
Ready Rock top, limestone, half top, limestone bottom.
Oh, limestone may refer to the color.
Which would be also lovely.
And then,
Yeah, it looks like for this cobblestone piece, it's a 6 square foot face that's carved
Cast, because it's concrete.
or cast with multiple faces on it.
Well, if the ledgestone looks like there's,
I was told the smallest I could get was an 8-inch. That's what I was told. So I don't know if that's indicative of everything that they have available to them or not.
Well,
But that's what I'm.
the other
finding.
advantage of the ledge stone is that it looks like an actual dry laid wall.
Mm.
I mean, because the where you would have mortar joints, it's deeper, or it appears to be deeper.
Yeah, it says that it gives it, there's 5.5 inches of depth to the face.
Yep. Wet cast concrete gives greater level of detail and durability.
well, they both say the
They
same
both say
thing.
that, yeah.
And it's architectural grade precast concrete.
I'm fine with either material. My personal preference when I think about stone walls around the village is for this more cut stone looking material, the ledge stone.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think
Ditto.
I just think it's a little bit more credible.
all right?
That's your recommendation, but you're
Yeah.
not saying that has to be that, right? The board can actually choose the material?
No, actually,
No.
No.
we're saying.
You're saying it has to be that?
Yeah, I mean, of these two, I would select that one.
What do they have at the hospital? Same thing?
It's not the same as either of these.
I don't particularly like what's at the hospital, I mean.
Well, I don't like the
particularly, I think it
color
was
of the
really-
thing.
No, I didn't like the color at all,
Yeah,
it
the
stands
color-
out.
Clearly, color
clashes
makes a
with
big
the brick.
difference.
Yeah.
I think the good thing
We
about
don't
this
have
ledge
anything to
stone
say
is that
about
it seems like there's more diversity.
Does that come in different colors though? I felt like that came in only that reddish color.
I don't know.
So you
That's
you
why
picked
I
it as
like-
an option, right?
No, those were options I was given from Mid-Hudson Concrete as to what was in my price range,
says
what we could
regional
use for that
colors.
size.
Yeah.
Regional colors and coordinating
Okay,
accessories
so
are available,
if
so
you
I
get
assume
that
that
in
you
a
could get like
gray,
a
then
field
I'd be
stone.
fine, then I'd be fine with that, but I don't like the red, if that was the case.
I think that's just the image they're
Okay.
showing. I mean, obviously, if you get to that point with the contractor and you realize you can only have red,
Yeah.
come back and talk to us,
Yeah.
but if you have the possibility to do a gray,
Yeah,
I think that's
'cause
much more
definitely-
stone-like than,
Exactly, but the other one's kind of like the hospital color, I'm sorry, I don't have color pictures for you.
it's best not to have color pictures, because we don't do a color.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before we go any further, do I have a motion on the secret status?
Yeah, I move it as type 2, because it's just a landscape feature.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
That's good for you, that means no further environmental review.
I know it is.
Okay. Sometimes people say.
I do grants.
okay, so do I have a motion on the application as we have it right now? We're looking for leadstone in the preferred applicant's color.
So moved.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Second?
Second.
Was that I mean,
That was
was
it,
a
yeah.
that was a
yeah.
second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright, so this is for the ledgestone in the color selected by applicant.
Okay,
That's it.
that's
That's
it.
it.
Alright, okay.
Done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next application, 191 Main, the applicant is not able to be here, but asks to have a review in absentia. However, 3 High Street is here.
Why don't we take care of the people that are here first and
That's what I'm
then,
thinking.
I'm gonna take your advice and sit down here. if that's all right. How are we doing tonight?
warming
Saw
up
you recently
slowly.
on one street below, right? You were in on for a Church Street
Yep,
property.
exactly.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, God, it was almost a year ago, I think. Got to do my yearly visit.
That's right.
Just gotta get Shane and Selmore down here, that's what I got.
Okay.
Thanks. Oh gosh, we've got, and your colleague,
Deb?
Elizabeth, no, I'm sorry, Deb Curdo, yep, sent the cover sheet. She had left off the cover sheet in the application. She did send that in later in the day. So you do have all of the pieces of that, application you need. Oh yeah, and you brought it with you.
Yeah, just a cover sheet.
Okay,
Just
so
a
here's
big
the rest. And did you bring images?
Of course. Got a complete package today. So I broke it down into pictures of the area as well as pictures of the house and the surrounding houses. This will give you a good feel for what we're looking at here. You know what I just noticed though? This bridge, vertical bridge here.
So did you, what are you?
So all we're doing, this is a simple, replacing replacing all the windows in the house. They're all double hungs. We're replacing like with like. The one question that I do have, looking at this now a little closer, there's currently one vertical grid on, I believe, all the windows.
So this portion
So
of
the
High
2 over
Street
2s?
is, just for folks, this portion of High Street is locally listed. So they're vinyl
No,
clad?
they're vinyl clad wood windows, yep, the Anderson 400 series. This will be used over on Church Street. White, and not that you care about the inside, but the way you were planning on doing white inside, white outside. That might be a problem.
It is gonna be a problem.
We're gonna have to add them on.
Yes, actually, we had this conversation, and we accepted the,
Right.
would like it about
The grid being one
One
vertical,
vertical, exactly.
so it's a two,
So it's a
two
two
over
pane
two.
over 2.
Correct,
Two lights
yep,
over
2 over 2, exactly. Yeah, we didn't write it up that way, but we'll go to order and we'll make those changes.
Okay, do I have a motion on secret application or status?
I move it as type 2, because it's a minor renovation.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What, do you know what the windows are currently?
Oh, just wood, or, old wood windows. The
They
single
look to
pane?
be, they look to be the
They are single thing.
original windows, and
Yeah.
they've also got their original storms, or
Mhm.
early storms, which is
Right.
what gives me pause,
Yeah.
straight up, because they're in fantastic condition, and they're all in place,
Storm?
and the windows.
Yeah, we got wood storms.
Uh,
They typically, like a U-type channel up here usually,
mhm.
and they slide down. Gives you pause because,
Because it's all original or early fabric that we're being asked to, taking out and replace with vinyl clad, so that's,
as opposed to something that's beat up and whatnot.
Or something that's already been
something
removed.
that can be repaired
Got it.
and fabric retained. That's my position. We can see what other board members say. I mean, I know this house really well. This is a house that we all see very frequently, and
Right.
those are repairable windows. So I personally can't support this. I won't be able to support the application.
The applied vertical, muntin, what is that made out of, and is it applied on the outside?
Well, that's a good question. We could do it a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
Typically, we would do it, in between the glass, but because for historical significance, make it look better, we can do, basically it'll be sandwiched, so it'll be a grid on
So
the
simulated
outside.
divided light.
Simulated
Simulated
divided
divided
light,
light,
exactly,
yeah.
correct.
And does the trim around the windows change at all?
Not at all.
And there's no infill to fit these windows or anything?
No, because we custom order them to the 1/4 inch.
Oh, okay.
So we would do them, in most applications, we typically wrap them with, PVC coated coil stock. In this case, obviously, because it's all wood trim around there, and we could certainly, leave it and just order them tight and caulk them.
Would there be any reason that you could not have the wood storms on the outside if you installed these windows?
That's a good question. You really don't want to, because you're gonna create a vapor lock in there.
Because they'll be so tight with the new windows in.
Exactly. They'll be tight, and then you also have, because the exterior of these windows is vinyl, so there's, my fear would be having a storm outside. It's just not designed for that, the materials and so forth.
But if all the windows are there and original and wood, and all the storms are there,
Mhm.
why are they being replaced?
Energy efficiency. I mean, no matter, even with a single window, there's a whole lot of factors. So a single window with a storm, it's not even as good as double pane glass, right? The new windows have Lowy glass, argon in between them.
I don't know, I noticed that.
Ultra, they're ultra
I noticed
efficient.
that on that house before.
Even with the storms, if you were inside the house and you touched the window today,
Mm-hmm.
it's cold.
Has the owner explored the option, because this does happen not infrequently with historic windows, of insulating the windows differently than they're insulated now, right? So you pack out the rail, the frame. I'm not saying that with the correct term, but there is
I
a
know
way
what
to
you mean.
insulate the frame of the window in a way that,
Well, it's not the frame isn't the problem, it's the glass as much as anything.
right, and you've got 2 layers of glass. So and an airlock between with the storm window. I understand that it's not a modern vinyl clad window, but we have so few houses in the village that retain all their windows. This is a loss. To take out 42 windows across the house? That's a huge loss of fabric. 13 windows.
13 windows. I understand, I appreciate, I understand and I do appreciate that. I spent, my formative years in, downtown, in Midtown Kingston, selling a lot of areas up through there. And, you know, I get the historical significance, but I guess what I don't, you know, what I don't understand is that, yeah, you know, I understand that everything is, you know, original as the house came, however, and, you know, I could show you, and unfortunately, I didn't even think to bring it, but in terms of energy performance alone, this house is gonna save 25%. And with all the, you know, the focus on, you know, on energy and energy costs, as well as, you know.
But understand that comparable numbers can be reached with historic windows with proper treatment. And I'm not convinced that that option has been explored with this application before recommending tearing out all the original
Well, it
windows.
definitely could be explored, it's definitely, you know, and.
That would be useful to have the owner.
And for that purpose, yeah, I mean, if nothing else, they could take the windows out, they could route them, put double pane glass in there essentially, so.
I
like that idea.
By the way, just out of curiosity, what is this piping here?
That's, certainly not gutter, I think that's just,
No, okay.
ventilation for various, it could be a dryer
I
on
think
one
it's
level.
AC,
or
isn't it?
Talking along
something.
where are you looking at?
It could be a
This-
multi-zone, like a
this
mini
thing.
split system.
Yeah, it's probably piping.
Yeah, but piping for what?
It is, but,
AC, maybe?
Yeah,
Split
what is
unit.
that unit on the
Maybe, yeah.
outside of the building there? It's a small unit.
yeah, it could be for a split unit.
Oh,
Yeah, I
That's
think,
what I
I
assumed
think
that
that's
was.
line height for, an HVAC system.
That's historically significant.
that's the weirdest damn thing I've
I
ever
don't
seen.
know.
I've seen it
Sorry
any
about
number of times, and I've always wondered, what is that?
I walk by this building all the time and I've never noticed it.
Never noticed it?
No.
Sharp, eagle-eyed, fleagle like
You
you?
know, it's funny, as many times I went through these pictures today, picking out the right ones to print out to bring down with us, I didn't notice it at all.
It certainly is unique.
I do understand
Is this in the
the,
national district or local? Local.
I do understand and, appreciate the desire to maintain the, character of the home and the windows. Two, single panes of glass will always be energy inefficient. There are, like you said, ways to pack out the frame of the window that would help the customer, certainly. But it would not have anywhere near the same effect as having a modern, glass pack there in the house. And for the homeowner, I feel like I don't wanna say it's a punishment, cause it's not.
Well, the owner knows that they live in an historic district. They've been residents in the district for a very long time, so this is not shocking news.
Agreed. At what point does it become reasonable to change the storms? Do they have to fall into disrepair beyond what can be fixed on their own?
Well, there is the question of disrepair and there's the question of neglect that causes disrepair, right?
Understandable, understandable.
Would it be possible, hypothetically, to add a second pane to all the storms? So then you would have two levels,
That's
two layers of glass.
It'd
It'd be
I mean,
easier
in
thing to do
terms
because you
of,
wouldn't be routing around.
in terms of energy efficiency and strictly energy efficiency, there is nothing that you can do that will be like a factory unit, period. In terms of the low E glass, in terms of the argon in between, which helps insulate it. Certainly in terms of functionality, and how do these windows function? I haven't been in the house.
Not, well,
Okay. No, which is typical between getting painted shut and, you know, so forth. But in terms of sheer energy efficiency, yeah, things can help. I mean, putting, you know, using that, you know, on the inside of the house, using that heat film,
Mhm.
right? That helps, right? But it's, you know, certainly not anywhere near, you know, just nowhere near as efficient as a factory window is.
Right, but you're saying so that to replace the whole unit, you'd be increasing the efficiency by 25%.
Correct.
Adding a second pane of glass to all the storm windows would be increasing it by 20%,
20%?
18%?
No.
Because you're not gonna be
Well-
able, what is the main insulating factor with the glass pack is the argon gas in between the panes. Argon gas being much denser than regular air, the heat has a more difficult time moving through it, similar to heat moving through water. It's a lot more difficult than
Mhm.
through regular air. So adding another pane without being able to pump in and seal in the argon gas, it's not gonna do it.
And that wouldn't be something, so these storms couldn't be retrofitted with argon glass?
No, you would have to
that's
take them
not
apart
even-
and reglaze
They're,
completely.
they're not thick enough. I mean, you need to have, these windows are, I believe they're 7/8 thick
Mm-hmm.
glass. So if you think about the width of the storm's probably only 3/4 of an inch thick. So that's just not feasible.
The windows we're putting in have about a little over a half of an inch of space in between the two panes filled with the argon gas. On a 3/4 inch, I mean, there's just not enough room
Mm-hmm.
to bring it up to where we would be by installing these. Additionally, there is the functionality issue. The windows, some of them are difficult, if not impossible, to open. While that
Which also
is a
could be
minor safety issue, it is still.
Well, it could be a safety issue, certainly.
I agree with the vice chair.
You what?
I said I agree with the vice chair. I think that this is a really big loss.
And it's a unique building in the village. We don't have a lot of Gothic revival. We have a fantastic row right here. This one is highly intact. And the thing you do that changes the structure more than anything is flip out the windows for something like vinyl clad. So it will be an essential loss of character, a character defining feature, and I can't support it.
I'm not sure I share that concern. I think, I hate to see loss of fabric, but I think in our guidelines, we say vinyl clad is acceptable. I don't
We
believe
do, and we
that-
also say the retention of fabric is essential.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And here we have a case of all the windows are in place, all of them.
I know, and.
But the next door neighbor isn't held to the same standards if theirs isn't.
This building has evolved differently, and that building has evolved differently. Here we have an opportunity to capture fabric before it's lost. That, it's possible that the window next door had its windows changed before the district was established. It's possible that they were done without permits. So, you know, without pulling the file, I don't know what the situation is with the building
No,
next door.
and I didn't mean necessarily the building next door, just in general throughout the district.
Absolutely, we're held to the same standard. That's what design standards are.
You were saying?
And that's what makes it fair across the board.
Yeah, I'm not totally, certainly I've always been the one to advocate retention of fabric, but I guess even if rehabilitated, the windows are never as tight as a new window. And you know, adding the storm window is not the same as a double glazed window. I mean, and so essentially we are in fact insisting on a less energy efficient window for the sake of saving the historic
But
value.
you haven't even asked for the windows to be repaired.
I know, but even
first.
if the windows are repaired, they will not be as energy efficient as a new window.
Well, if you had the new windows installed, retaining the exterior storms, would there be some way of putting some sort of vents into the frame of the storm that would prevent this vapor lock thing going on?
That's a good question.
It would depend on the current storms, the condition, and how.
Do they have, I don't mean to cut you off, but do they have screens? I assume they have screens for the storms?
If
Or do they
they
just
have
take- or do they just
storms,
take 'em off?
They should have screens also, you know.
Right. If they have screens, I wouldn't be concerned at all about that. They'd have to leave the exterior screens on rather than replacing them, depending on the time of year with the glass packs.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So with screens, that's
With
the
screens, it
ventilation.
takes away the
Right.
it takes
Sure.
away the vent.
Well, usually this type of storm is a lift off, you see the
Right.
hinges on it, it's a lift
Exactly.
up at the top,
Yeah,
lift
they-
off
they
the
lift
screen
off.
in the winter and put the glass on and then flip it in the spring. Which is
Exactly.
a pain in the backside, no argument.
Absolutely is. But, if they have this, if they have, yeah,
But there's no way of like drilling vent holes or something.
no, you really
It's
wouldn't
gonna-
want to, because this way, if they
Yeah.
open the window, they want ventilation, they can get ventilation. And essentially, in the wintertime, it truly, there won't be anything gained by them switching it out and putting the glass packs in, as opposed to the screens. There'd be nothing gained by that at all. So they could just leave the screens on all the time, and frankly, as long as the frames on them are fine, it's not a big deal to have them rescreened when they need to. It's a good suggestion, good thought anyways.
So what do we do to move forward?
Would it be possible to have a meeting with the applicant, the homeowner themselves, to talk about some options?
If we can't come, well, I guess, what do you think about Carolyn's idea about, as part of the window replacement, insisting that the original screens be refurbished and be installed on top?
Screens or screens and storms, those are two different things.
Well, I think that during the winter, there's no need for a storm, because the window itself is probably more efficient than
Exactly.
the storm. So it basically would
I
be
see.
the screen.
So it would be
Well, that would
filling
be-
the gap of so the hardware would remain in use, and the channel that's designed to hold the storm will be in use year round, it'll just only be holding a screen. But the original wooden window will be
Gone.
gone.
Oh.
Right.
We need to, it's gonna be a long night,
Good.
we need to move something here.
So is that your recommendation, Carolyn?
Well, no, I was actually talking about keeping the storm windows, but somehow venting the storm window. I
Yeah,
wasn't talking about switching them out with screens.
well, I'm sure they switch them out with
Well,
screens
also-
during the spring and summer.
This is clearly a property owner that wants to think about functionality. These are windows that tip in, right? They tip in
Right.
to wash
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
and clean, and so there's lots of other reasons besides aesthetics for why you would switch to this window.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is a pain in the butt. I have the,
Let's do your windows.
someday when there's cash. No, I'm keeping my windows come hell or high water.
Somehow I got that feeling.
Cold, dead hands.
Okay, so, I'm willing to approve it, let me just sort of a straw vote here, you're against
I
it.
am against.
Sean, are you against it?
I am, as proposed, I still think it's too big of a loss, without having an understanding of the other options being analyzed.
I'm 50-50, I'd prefer to speak with the owner.
All right,
And we're one lady down, so,
Yeah, you're a
I'll make the
tiebreaking vote.
deciding vote.
I think we should have a meeting with the owner,
Sure.
and after they've been able to kind of get an idea of what it would take to repair.
And in terms of the owner, information, you wanna, I guess, realistically, you would like them to pursue other options for keeping the existing.
I'd like to actually, I would like to do a site visit to understand what kind of disrepair we're talking about. We have approved entire replacements. I'm thinking of the house on the corner of Stone and, is it Cross? Stone
Yeah,
and
Stone and Cross.
18 Stone Street.
Mm-hmm.
The windows were quite literally falling to pieces. That was an extreme case.
How about
But
your neighbor?
Hoffman?
I wasn't part of the vote, so I don't know what you did.
Those were not all original windows.
Is what?
They were not all original windows.
In Hoffman's house,
Yeah.
yeah.
He only, I think, well, they had 4, according to the application, they had 4 wooden windows. And they also ended up doing replacement sashes, not replacement, it was a different situation.
Well, and let me ask this one thing, just so it's clear in my mind. Now, when we're talking about replacement windows, we're talking about the frame coming out and the new frame going in?
Nope.
we're
Existing
talking
frame
about-
stays, we take out the sash.
Sash.
The interior stops, the sash. Were these weren't weights, were they? I don't think the house is that old, there were sash weights on them.
Well, the house is that old.
The house
It has that old, I don't recall specifically,
That it does.
going
Yeah.
back.
Well, the question is that, is it the frame within the existing frame?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so then I'll change my vote on that also, because
Yeah.
essentially you're reducing the size.
You are
of-
reducing the size, correct,
Reducing the size of the,
Glass.
let's be
Glass.
specific.
of the glass.
The glass.
Yeah, totally.
And just out of curiosity, has anybody checked to see if that drops any room below the required light and vent? No, light and vent, code requires a certain percentage of the square of the floor area, for window openings as well as, but that's not our issue.
Yeah,
That's-
that's a secondary thing.
All right,
I mean, we certainly can do them as full frame units rather than replacements, I know what you're saying. You're gonna have twice as thick frames,
Right.
certainly less glass. We certainly can do it that way, in terms of coming back with some of these answers, is the next meeting's not till January, I assume? Or is it something?
The next voting session,
Well, yeah, because of,
the holiday.
Yeah, we generally have one voting meeting a
One
month.
voting.
One voting meeting and then we do a workshop, but because workshop this month falls in Christmas.
it would be the 10th, January 10th.
Okay. I guess I'd like to, come back to town with the homeowners, plus we're gonna obviously have to have some conversations with them. As well as I probably also gonna wanna have my, install manager come down and just look at the house in terms of replacing the whole frames
yeah.
also. That was not something that registered until you mentioned that.
Well, actually, replacing the whole frame would actually reduce the size of the glass even more?
No,
No.
no, if we take out, no, because we typically, as a replacement window, we'll typically take out the sashes, top and bottom, and then basically take a whole frame and put it inside the existing frame,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, so that automatically reduces it by.
So
This
you're taking out the
was-
trim on the inside to do
Yeah,
that? Okay.
exactly.
This was the conversation that we had with Hoffman.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and I could see, that I definitely can see where would be an issue,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of aesthetics, absolutely. So we wanna talk to the homeowners, I wanna see how committed they are to doing this.
Well, and as you
We'll
talk
look at
about
the
that,
screens.
excuse me for interrupting.
Sure.
As you talk about that issue, one of the
Mhm.
things that does define the character of this house is that it's squat. It's sort of a low little
Right,
structure. And the windows on the top have heft. And if you think about narrowing those windows, it changes the
Oh,
whole
I get
dynamic.
it.
Yeah.
But I get it,
So,
Totally.
I mean, that would be one of the goals, is to retain that sort of, that
Yep.
feeling of lowness and that.
absolutely, and that wouldn't be a problem, just, there's, you know, again, this is conversations we need to have with the
Yeah.
homeowner, because there's additional cost to replace the whole frames and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. Plus, I wanna see, obviously, if they have, I don't know from these pictures, it's hard to tell if these are screens or storms on there. It looks like they're storms, actually.
Yeah.
But obviously, we wanna see if they have the screens, because if they don't have the screens and they only have the storms, then it just complicates it.
They have screens.
They definitely have the screens?
Mhm.
Okay,
They don't have their still screens in.
alright, so that part does it.
Well, and then certainly, I mean, if they have the storms, then certainly I would think that and you need a frame for the screen, you can pop up the glass and put in the screening material.
Right,
So are we tabling this?
I would like to table it, if we could.
So tabled.
So tabled, bid
Thank you.
application until January 10th.
Okay, so you'll be back on,
We shall be back.
And you'll be on under old business, it'll be
Okay.
earlier in the agenda.
No, and I appreciate it, and I totally appreciate what you do in terms of trying to preserve the appearance of the architecture.
Well,
and
right.
everything and so forth.
I do appreciate your applicants, your property owners' concerns too. It's always a balance, right?
Absolutely
Looks like
is.
the storm themselves have a mulligan.
Yeah, it is, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you see that thick bar across there, right? Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you very much,
Cool.
everybody. Have a good
Gentlemen.
holiday, good
Happy
New
holidays.
Year.
You too, Happy New
As
Year.
well.
So I move into workshop session to address the applicant who's here, 126, rather than dealing with
do I have a
voting.
second?
What's 191?
191. Peter is not able to be here tonight, so he asked us to review to review without him.
But what is the request?
A shed.
Shed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, do I have a second on the moving to workshop?
Second.
Sure.
All in favor?
This is another Home Depot. I'm just gonna pull out this whole Pendaflex on it. 26 if you can decide. Use that one. Whoa, it's not even 9 o'clock. No.
Karen, you might get in bed by your bed.
I know. Crazy.
Hello, everybody.
All right.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Karen's gonna do a little show and tell.
Ooh.
Is that a model in that bed?
No. Oh, should you tell them your idea?
Pop up with.
Yes, well, for a model, I was putting the finishing touches on my model, which were gumdrops and powdered sugar. I made a gingerbread house version of the proposed project in the spirit of the holidays, so. But
That'd be good, that'd be a
Creative.
first.
I would consider that to be a bride, so.
I think there is, as long as it's not valued at more than
Yeah,
$25,
exactly.
I think it's not considered a bribe or something like that, so.
Let's wait till Kathleen gets back and let's talk about where we are with the,
Secret.
yes.
So where we are is we are sneaking up
Oh,
on,
yeah,
okay,
so we don't have to
okay.
go back over.
Well, I'll give these to you then, this is material for tonight, updated.
Let's see who this is. Okay, so I asked Karen to give us an update on the secret process, on where we are and what's happening.
So the update is, we are sneaking up on, completing our part three response. And the moment we have it done, we will get
Let
it
us
to
know.
the village clerk and let you all know so that we can all start to coordinate the next meeting, because I know there are a lot of people who need to attend that, so.
And
our-
Glenn sort of alluded to the fact that he'd have the report done by the end of the week. That, I think he was feeling optimistic when he said that, but
Did you have, I know that, I think the emails were just exchanged earlier this week or the end of last, did you have any luck getting in touch with the animal people?
Oh, they responded today.
Yeah.
Oh, that
yes,
was just
we
today?
do.
I think
Yeah,
it was today.
yeah, we have every response from every party.
We got the Eagles covered.
Eagles, bats,
That's bats.
thank God.
Oh, the
no
bats, forgot the bats,
sturgeon.
right. Sturgeon are covered.
That's
Fence
right.
lizards. Glenn was relieved there was no fence lizards nearby for some reason. I haven't looked that up yet.
It's probably better not to know.
What kind of lizards? What kind of lizards?
Fence
Fence
lizards.
lizards.
Oh, fence lizards?
Yeah.
I found some sort of a lizard on my front porch.
Well, you may have fence
okay.
lizards.
Really?
You may
Well,
have-
I mean,
So at
lizards.
least now we know who we have
Salamander.
to keep an eye out as far as secret goes.
I'm out of the picture.
So you can do what you want with your
You can
fence
have your lizards.
fence lizards.
Grill my lizards if I want.
And I participated in the archaeological dig, which was kind of fun.
Oh, cool.
I got to go out there and while they were working. Nothing there, no findings. Sorry.
Except a
That's-
bunch of dead flowers.
Yeah.
We
Flower-
did find fragments of flower pots.
Flower.
I'm surprised that you didn't find that they didn't find baking paraphernalia. They didn't
Well,
find.
but how
Well,
much of it would be?
He said that actually there was almost nowhere for him to get a viable
Test pit.
test because the site has
Been
been
so disturbed.
almost.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did go under the windows near the building just to say he did. But I said, I
So
don't
it's been
think they're
thorough.
gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are these? What are these up here? I think we talked about that last time.
Those are proposed divided lights.
Okay, so as far as the secret, you're gonna let us know when part 3 is ready.
Correct.
Then that goes to AKRF
Correct.
for their review, and once they've had chance to review it, we can schedule another meeting to go over that.
Correct.
And, all right, so part
I
1,
have 2 copies of this, that's yours.
the part 1 is done, because that was commented on, updated. Part 2 is ours,
And we've been
and
through that.
we assume that AKRF has updated, so we're just waiting on the part 3. Okay.
Right.
Keep
So
the
yeah, I guess
process
it's
moving.
just,
Okay, so, but in lieu of that, what we're looking at are the things which would be part of the part 3 mitigation.
that's correct,
Right,
which would
okay.
be, and specifically the proposed new structure
Right.
tonight, so what I've done is updated the elevations. There are kind of minor changes since the last time. The basic size of the building and massing is the same. What we've done is just kind of noted, and I'll get into that in more refined details in the next step, but we maintained the front cornice parapet detail with the brackets that has been recommended by AKRF. And also the brackets for the bay window, the 2-story bay. And in addition to that, as we're working through the interior, we will, be diligent in our efforts to incorporate existing beams. However, that's not a part of this particular application, since those elements would not be visible in the street. But we've also, would like to try to incorporate brick from the existing structure wherever feasible, if we can use it in the new chimney or in foundation facing.
For the
but-
foundation, you mean?
Correct, yes. The foundation and or the existing chimneys. So that's somewhat dependent on, how it comes apart and if it's
Sure.
usable, but that would be our goal, to try and use, as much of those features as possible, as well as the interior doors on the second floor, which we understand are quite old, so we feel that those can be reincorporated, particularly on the second floor. And it's, yes, have a
Can't wait for
home
this garage
somewhere.
sale, with all the stuff that you can't get in there. Just those timbers and bricks for sale.
So basically, yeah, we just wanted to give you updated plans which kind of show in more detail the scale of the building, because we've kind of gotten more into the nitty gritty of how the structure might lay out and the roof pitch. And in particular, its relation to the other buildings on that street, so we've also illustrated a streetscape, showing that.
How's the lot line goes right against Jimmy's building? Wow.
In fact, technically, this building sits over the
He's
lot line.
Is that so?
renting, yeah, it's,
Goodness.
it's
According
very
to the
I mean, it doesn't
survey.
surprise me, the lines are wacky.
Yeah, even in the back, we actually had Glenn do a survey, and everybody's on everybody else's,
Yeah, it's kind of
all-
mutually assured
yeah.
destruction.
Yeah.
Fences are here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, essentially the property line for all intents and purposes is right on the face of the building.
And if you go, I mean, this isn't really a concern, this is just my curiosity, if you block that off, can he get in from the other side to maintain this facade on his building?
If,
I mean, from the rear, can he?
Yeah,
yeah, if we block it off,
you mean we have the
gate?
fence here?
Yeah, yeah.
So the alley is open from the back,
Yeah, that's the
so,
question.
yeah, if he needs to do, he can ask my permission and then
Right.
do stuff.
That's-
We're working on that.
That's the important part, yeah.
Is the, just on the alley, is the 5'2", is that a specific, is that to accommodate something specific, or is it just, is
Yeah.
that just how you feel comfortable?
Yeah, that's
separating them?
approximately 5'2". So basically when we're kind of applying for the variance, we want the face of our building 5 feet off of the property line, because that's the current side yard setback
Mhm.
requirement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So when laying out kind of where the building sits on the property, we'll be defining it by the foundation, but I would imagine trim details would project with
Mhm.
siding and corner boards approximately 2 inches off of the foundation. So that's why I'm kind of giving us a couple inches of leeway in that regard. So, pardon me.
The one question I have is that the grill pattern on the front, the storefront windows,
Mm.
you know, why?
Because I like it,
Okay,
okay, so
That's the-
that's why that's there.
okay.
I think that's attractive.
Well, and I'm thinking about the, Carone's building on Stone Street, which is completely different in age and
Yeah.
character, but, remember the commercial windows that he proposed had the band of glass on top, and also, somebody else has small panes on Main Street, somebody else has small rectangular
I
panes.
think catty corner from us.
See, that's the dividing line, catty corner, kitty corner.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Um,
Drawer or drawer, not doing your now.
On the corner of Kemble and Main, the brick building, not Hudson Hills, but.
Oh, and that's new construction, but there
Building
is
by
an
gallery.
historic, is it
No, it's
Well-
further down, further this way.
Berkelman? Somebody
Somebody-
has, in any
Berkelman
case.
has, they have like the dense.
Big ones.
Um,
I just
they have
drove
those big
up and
panels,
down
those
and looked,
multi-light
and there
panels.
are different size top lights, but all
Mhm.
square.
Yeah,
no
I like the
square.
square top lights. I'm less enthusiastic about the kind of bow in them.
I kinda like that, kinda brings the two windows together.
Oh really? I think it. Okay.
I
Noted.
only lean away from them because there aren't, it's not a feature that we have on the Main Street, but I'd be totally comfortable with rectangular because there are others.
well,
There's precedent.
Well, just
The-
because just because there isn't an exact precedent for it, I don't
Well,
see
and
any
the other
reason why it
thing,
should
Yeah,
be
the
because-
other
rejected.
thing to consider is it's new construction. In this
Right.
scenario, it's new construction,
new
It is new
construction,
construction.
yeah.
I think it kind of just makes the windows seem a little bit further away than they actually are.
smaller.
I don't know if it's because it's like, whereas if it was like a broken horizontal line seems less like continuous, but an arc, I don't know. It was just something that kind of jumped out to me, and I was like, oh, those windows are really far apart, but anyway. I'm not opposed to the storefront having lights on the top, and actually I think it's kind of a nice.
I guess for me,
feature.
and you sort of brought this up about, I'm having a hard time with the big windows. I don't want to deal with a big window display and take up that much of the retail space.
Mm-hmm.
And even like next door, which is, a big, I don't know, that just bothers me. I like something on the top, which is just sort of making the window space a little bit
Mhm.
softer and taller.
It's kind of a balance.
Yes, yeah.
It's a chick thing.
Well, I mean, if you were, did she just say that?
Yes.
Misogyny.
Oh my
Sweetheart,
God,
me
goodness.
too. If you were asking to take a building which was otherwise unchanged and replace the window with that, I might hesitate. I feel more flexible in this scenario because it is new construction and the building that was there is quite modified. I mean, you're not
Mm.
asking to put a
Yeah.
bay window back. I mean, an oriel window on the front, so.
No, we are not.
You're not.
And we won't.
What kind of feedback is helpful at this stage?
Well, we just like to kind of continue the conversation about the overall size and the mass and the direction of where the building is headed. Obviously, I'll delve into more dimensions and details regarding trim, but I think this gives you a pretty clear sense of where we're headed. We do feel that the building is appropriate in scale, both in terms of its relation to obviously the Silver Spoon and the immediately adjacent building, but also the McCaffrey structure up the hill, and feel that it kind of creates kind of a sensible progression of the building sizes as we're moving up the street and up the hill. And in terms of its depth on the property, again, we feel the same, that it's definitely in comparison to the depth of those two buildings in particular, but also other buildings on Main Street, and we do have the property to support it. And the L projection, which we've discussed a couple of times, and there was a little bit of back and forth about that, but again, we feel that not only is that an important part of the building in terms of our spatial desires for the retail space, but also as an aid in screening the parking area from the
Mhm.
main street. And giving the building itself, which otherwise I think would appear like a long flat facade, going toward the back of the property, which is very visible on this lot. On other properties, it's not so visible because the buildings are all tight. But here we feel that projection actually provides much needed relief to that facade.
It sort of looks much more like a building on a corner now. You know what I mean? Whereas right
That's
now,
true.
it's like, it looks like a building that lost its sister or something and has this empty lot next to it.
That's true. That's
It's
true.
designed, and I think it's because, like, in this rendering where you have the car, it's almost drawn as if it's a street,
Yeah,
because of the way that it's rendered,
Yeah.
but
I was gonna ask you if you were proposing a new street.
across street, a tall street,
That's
ready for
you.
construction.
That's right.
Well, I mean, also you think about some of the buildings on Main Street, and particularly the one right next door, that has had additions to the rear, and they're completely irrational. Sort of one piece piled on another, and this is sort of a rational approach to extending to the rear.
Well, because most of the buildings are never seen from
That's right.
they're only ever seen from the front facade or maybe the back.
Well,
But
and
you
from
never
the
really
back,
look at them diagonally,
when you do see them from the back, they have that sort of little house, big house, back house, barn feeling, where
Yeah.
they just kept going sticking stuff on the back, and this sort of
Except
feels
they
like.
never do it in a good progression. the
Right,
way that-
exactly.
But this is the way you'd see a corner lot.
Yeah.
No, I think the fact that it modulates that facade and it's not just one big vroom going back is kind of desirable. I think one of the things you might wanna think about is lighting, the exterior lighting.
Right.
I mean, we're not at that stage yet, but you know, it's,
The other thing is that, as a new building, you're gonna have to comply with ADA.
Correct.
But they're doing that on the rear, right?
We have,
Well,
Or
We have two accessible entrances, the side entrance, so on A1, which is the first floor plan. We have the side entrance would be accessible as well as the rear. The rear, of course, is close to the handicap parking, but the intent is for the side entrance to really be the primary entrance. So it's easily accessed through a ramp to the sidewalk and connecting around the building, as well as access from the Main Street sidewalk to the curb.
what happens, I'm sorry, you've answered this before and I just can't remember. So you've got a property line issue on the front. How, it's hard to tell in this rendering, how far back from this facade is your facade? How far set
Well,
back?
We would like to have it as close to being aligned as possible. So the issue would be if we are allowed to have our cornices overhang the property line
Onto village property.
onto village property. And
And didn't you say that the existing building is like 6 inches over the line or something? right
yeah,
now,
the
or-
existing building sits over the line and the front stoop is completely on
completely
village
There's a
Village
whole
property.
bunch like that on Main Street.
Yeah.
Right, so in reconstructing it, we'd love to have the facade of the building
Mm-hmm.
right in line with the silver stone, which means the cornices, the overhangs would hang over.
Is that the
village
only part that would be over?
Correct, right.
So that is potentially, because we're workshopping, throwing stuff out, that is potentially something that if it were to make a visual difference, the board could advocate to the trustees on that issue. Our board, I mean, could advocate on that issue.
Mm.
Well, except I think it's pretty much standard in building codes that they do allow cornices as projections, allowable projections over the property line
On new construction?
in new construction. Yeah.
And, but
I
the
guess
other
you
thing
wanna
it
know
could
that.
affect as well is the signage, whatever yours, I mean, again, which is very, many steps down the road, but, signage projections, the code for signage projection refers only to signs that are projecting over village property.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to do a blade sign or something like that,
Right,
the allowable depth over village property is really, really small.
okay.
I think like
yeah, but here
Oh,
we're
okay.
having
10 inches.
we're having a sign that's affixed right on the face of the building now.
Yeah, I mean, as presented in this scheme, but
Yeah,
Okay.
And that's interesting that you say that, because we did go to the village board to ask a few questions about the projection of the building and the front stoop, and we actually got we didn't get, any helpful feedback. But then I met the mayor on site just to show him what we were
Mhm.
actually talking about, and talking about purchasing the sidewalk, which I'm not really interested in. They make that sound like, oh, it's a small amount of money, but then it's $2,000 for the lawyer and then the surveyor, and, you know, it
I think the
becomes a
village ought to
big
be selling them to
expense.
owners for $1, that's what I think, and getting it
Well,
off.
if they were gonna pay their own legal fees,
Right.
that would be one thing, but, they don't seem willing to do that, and we have this 1/4 acre lot, so why do we need to purchase sidewalk? And I don't really understand, so you purchase the sidewalk, you're still treated like it's the village sidewalks, I don't really see the advantage to it, from the property owner point
The
of
flip
view.
side of it is that it would from the village perspective, it becomes your liability.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, I don't
B,
see the
No,
advantage
no,
for me.
but I'm saying if that's X square feet, if every property up and down Main Street had, that runs over the village property line were sold for X amount, that becomes taxable square footage. I don't understand why,
Collectively.
you know, it seems like it's to the
But
village's
from your
advantage to sell
perspective,
it.
as the building owner, in
Exactly
your
the
case,
opposite.
you wouldn't be building on it, you would just be having it be part of the sidewalk, so you are now liable for like
More sidewalks.
6
More
inches
sidewalks.
of
Right,
sidewalk.
I'm still
with no way of keeping
responsible
people
for
off of it,
the,
yeah.
Sidewalk, the way I understand it, you know, maintaining it, keeping it
But there's
clean,
not enough
Right.
getting rid of the snow. So why do I wanna buy it too? I'm already maintaining it. And then he seemed amenable to, you know, I was asking him, would you like to see some green space in front of the building, or would you just like sidewalk? And he was very open to gardening and sprucing it up a
Mhm.
bit without purchasing it, so. So anyway, that might come to be something that if we did end up rebuilding, we might need to do.
Well, I mean, I guess it's something, given what Al has raised, it's something that you need to be sure about, is whether or not you can project, because I would also be advocating for having the street line, the building line as consistent as possible.
We'd like to have it on the street too, but I would also like the building to be on my property. I
Right.
don't know, that just seems
But
to
and,
make
and
sense.
Karen and I have discussed this too. I think separating it from the adjacent. I mean, if it's a matter of half a foot, it being separated by 5 or 5.5 feet from the next building, I think it's going to be quite imperceptible. If it is such a small change.
Going from 5 to 5 or whatever, is that what you mean?
No, if the
Setback.
front of Jimmy's building and the front of this building
because they're going to be
are
further apart. I
because
get it.
because they're not sharing a common corner anymore.
Right.
If there's a space in between them and the new building is set back 6 inches off of the line, so that it's
Mhm.
on the actual line as opposed to being over the line, I feel like that's a pretty. It's far enough away that you wouldn't really notice.
Probably not with that small difference.
And I like the idea of landscaping a little around the front, not that you can guarantee things survive, but that would
Mhm.
also kind of hide a few inches of
Well, it
that
has
from
been
the-
kind of like a little pocket park there
Yeah,
for so
there's
long.
always been that little landscaping
Because
kind of
because it was, as the flower shop, it was planted with lovely
Mhm.
perennials, and maybe you can dig some up and save them. I mean, one of the things
You
that
may be attracting the fence lizards.
Yeah, I'm worried about that.
Oh.
As long as they come after, we
Afterwards,
get
then-
through
okay.
the EAF, then.
Or the timber rattler, God
Right.
forbid, that was another one.
But it also shows from in this rendering as well. It looks like you're intending to put some planting around the edge, around the corner going into the driveway as well, which I think will help to soften
Yes, yeah.
I think materials are gonna make, if this is the mitigation of choice, and we don't know that it is, but if it is, materials will be the thing that makes a difference, because right now, this is very reflective of the structure that's there, right? So, we don't want exact replica, but there are elements in the rear that make it not. I think that the idea of these, I'm not crazy about them, but I think that these little sort of eyebrow elements over the big windows differentiate it from the building that's there now. And the way that the form is expressed in the material will make it recognizable as new construction as well, if this is the option in the end. I do think a lot about the fact that the choices that are made with this parcel are really impacting to, we've got a building next door that's endangered by the water issues here. So I do think about that in terms of mitigation, is are we making a better condition for
For
two
buildings.
structures? Yeah,
Right.
that represents a big chunk of that block.
Well, I will say that peering through the walls, the building next door will benefit from being able to sheathe and side his building.
So a different set of issues over there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, he has no opportunity you get in there, you know, to do
On that side,
what
no,
needs to be
yeah.
done on that side, yeah.
It's also going to increase his building's visibility from a public right of way.
Correct.
We'll see how he feels about that.
Mm. All sorts of issues like this, yeah.
I just had one other question too, I'm just out of curiosity. Now that you're moving off of the lot line, it doesn't look like you're incorporating any windows on that side of the building. Is that just for privacy?
I didn't even look at that.
Right, the main issue is, the fire protection on that wall.
Mm.
And when you have openings in the firewall, you need to protect them. So we're still kind of weighing what that's going to mean and if it's the pros and cons and the expense of having to do that,
Mhm.
in the ways of a fire shutter or something on a window. Cause I think it would be nice to have one or two windows, not that you're going to get a lot of light, but on the upstairs floor plan in particular, not
Yeah, I
in
was
the
thinking, I mean, in the
retail space.
bathroom and in the hall.
Yeah,
at
that
least.
was our original thought, but then we weren't sure when you talked about fire security,
Mm.
what, and how that
Yeah,
worked.
that makes sense.
So down on the first floor, we would not add any windows in the retail
Yeah.
space. And the fence, just going back to your question about the building being on the property line, our intent would be to have the gate between the buildings, the alley gate set back about 5 feet from the property line.
Like the one between,
Yes, that was a good call, I saw that.
what used to be Momenia.
Oh, no, you sent me to Beacon.
Oh, yeah, the hotel,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that was nice.
I forgot that we talked about that.
Let's see what else. That kind of covers our intent, and if
Does any, I mean, I have to agree with most of what Kathleen said. I think this is a good direction. It's new construction, so certainly there's a little bit more leeway than you would have with an existing building, so. Anybody have any other comments or suggestions that they wanna share?
No, I think this is a very good direction.
I'm just reading all the material notes before we.
I actually have a question for you guys. We're looking into bollard lighting for the site. We've come up with a few options and we're kind of looking at that. Just wondering if any of you recall what the bollards down at the
James
left.
can tell you, he put them in,
Oh.
he chose those.
I think they're Louis Folsom.
I can't remember.
But, okay. Yeah, they're great. We're looking for something like that, but that doesn't have a full radius of light, but has something that would shield it and direct the light into the property. And we do have a few options which we'll present, but I'm researching that a little more, so.
I think that they spend a lot of time at Scenic Hudson looking at bollard options, they probably tell you all sorts of things.
There are many
Yes, you could go
hideous
down a rabbit
ones.
hole.
There are very few attractive ones and many attractive ones,
Yeah.
so, okay. And yes, exterior lighting will work on the building as well, and examples of that. So, and just in terms of the site, Sue has had somebody work on a landscape plan, which will be part of our EAF submission, but this is just kind of a general concept, cause you were commenting about some greenery. So there will be some softscape landscaping around, but again, the goal is to kind of get the parking in behind the structure. There will be 2 parallel spaces along that side of the property. And this is all on the site plans that Beatty and Watson did, but this is kind of a simplified conceptual plan, just, which will be further defined in the landscape plan. If that helps kind of clarify it a little.
Cool.
Alright.
Fun.
So we
Paving
were,
stones. I was trying to figure out what you were trying to grow in the alley.
no.
Oh, no.
Those are skylights to the underground vault.
To the,
Yeah, that's-
to the tunnel.
You know,
To the
I'm surprised, I'm surprised that there are not underground vaults underneath the sidewalks in front of the buildings, because historically, you would have had a lot of them, because that's where they would have done things like delivered coal.
Well, especially
delivered other
with
stuff.
ovens in this building, I'm surprised, I
Mm.
mean, maybe there
Yeah, but
was.
The ovens were on the back,
Mm.
weren't they?
Yeah, that's how.
Yeah, but where would you
It-
feed the coal down? I guess in the
if-
back of the
it-
building.
You would just take it in on a truck, right?
Well,
The
and
cart,
if I
the
remember
cart.
correctly, in the, weren't there some openings in the front where they probably dumped the coal
On the sides.
on the side? Yeah, it was, I think here, there was something which,
There are openings that didn't correspond to the windows.
Right.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is I'm surprised that there aren't more
Hatches.
up and down Main Street,
yeah.
because you would expect, buildings of this age, what else would you have? You'd either be burning wood or coal.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there were, and when sidewalks got rebuilt at some point,
We just closed
I don't
them
know.
all.
It is surprising, you're right.
Yeah.
I know, it's just like you have all the vaults in New York City,
And here they're just Bilco doors everywhere, which is strange. Right, like the back of this, you've got a Bilco door proposed here.
Because there isn't a sidewalk vault tax in New York City. If you have an underground vault underneath the sidewalk and it's part of your building and you use it for storage, you get taxed on that.
Maybe I should tell them. I'm joking.
And there's actually a report that you have to file periodically with the city of New York, otherwise you get.
Is it something that would have, would they have been broken up or filled in or something during when they installed the sewer?
It might have been, who knows?
I mean, 'cause that would have been space that could have been reclaimed for,
Usually the sewers were in the street itself,
Yeah,
sewers and water lines.
yeah, you're right.
not under the sidewalk, I see what you mean.
I feel like it's gonna be interesting to see as we go forward how the public responds to this application. I think it's gonna be a hard sell.
I know.
For some folks either way. Well,
Not
you'd be surprised the
No,
number
I
of
think-
people that
I
say,
think that this has enough similarity in a way
I think
that
so
it's
too.
not so far away from what is there. It's like a nicer, cleaned up version of it
well,
in a way.
that's where I was gonna go, is that initially, do you remember how this was first on agendas, people were sort of panicky about, don't let them,
Yeah,
people do it.
people were
Panicky.
coming up to you and saying, don't let them tear that down.
But
Well, when
it's such an
the headline
education.
on the Putnam County News says wrecking ball to history.
Well, what do you expect? Come on. In previous days, it would have been Sean Conway swings it from his teeth. But I think this is going to be an interesting public education opportunity to talk about preservation concepts, right? And what it is that the essence of a structure is, and how things contribute to a district, and how change helps a district evolve. So anyway.
Well, the response that we've had from people coming by or the neighbors has been mostly happiness that there is gonna be an improvement on the building. that
It's been
they're
neglected a
tired
long
of-
time.
Yeah, the neglect.
I'm surprised though that we've never had somebody come in and say, I wanna build a really modern building, here.
We did the Meyer
Yeah,
building
because there are some
Good building.
interesting
on
modern
Kimball Avenue.
homes
No, I'm
around
talking about
there.
Main Street.
On Main Street.
Well, there's not very many buildable. that's not-
Well, I
Well,
mean,
that's
if
true.
this were a different applicant, that might have been an option here, but you happen to be someone who's interested in historic forms, right? So it sort of depends on who
I
you
am
get.
completely learning from you, I'm not taking credit for
Actually,
that.
a concrete and glass block would be
Yeah,
right
would be
in.
more my husband's, he's a concrete high-rise construction company,
Wow.
so he's all about
Mm.
squares and, yeah, so.
You might be surprised, I mean, Main Street's tough, but I think you might be surprised to the openness that there is to new design. I mean, the Meyer House is a great example. I love that building because it doesn't look like anything else in the district and it's of its time. Not on Main Street though.
Yeah. It will be
Anyway.
interesting.
So just one other note, since we're just kind of throwing things out, for windows, what we are leaning toward is aluminum clad, double hung windows.
Great.
With simulated divided lights, we're looking at Marvin, ultimate double hung,
Mhm.
next generation, it's a mouthful. But that's where we're leaning, and we're hoping that since this would be a new building, that the aluminum clad, I know you've approved aluminum clad elsewhere in the,
Right on
National
Main Street,
District.
yeah, 194 has the miters on that. those aluminum clad windows are beautiful, the navy blue house, one down from Tony Phillips' house.
The, after we go through the secret process and we agree on whatever the mitigation is, I think after that we can, probably shouldn't be very much, but I think after that we can get into the nitty-gritty of specific materials and, manufacturers of windows and the light fixtures and so on.
Okay.
When you walk by, if you walk by the building sometime, some of the conversation we've had with the neighbors is about the fence around the property. And in the back corner, Mr. Heffernan has a style of fence that is shared by two boundaries, and it's okay with me. So maybe if you walk by and look at it, just for a mental picture, when we, if we
You mean
I
to
mean, we'll-
reuse that type of fence?
Yes.
That type of fence is all over the district.
So
With a,
it's-
with a
Yeah, it's a solid bottom.
solid bottom with, pickets at the top, right?
Right.
It's falling in. Who owns that?
Oh, no,
It's on Seth's part where it's falling in, right?
no, that fence is just a stockade fence along,
Bob McCaffrey.
yeah, and I just said.
Oh, no, I mean the
let's
back.
just-
So,
I
on
think
the
that's
back-
Is this
like
McCaffrey's?
shape.
no, that is Heffernan's,
Which
and
is
that
where?
is pretty much back here, like this.
But Seth has the
and
same
Has
Seth
the
has
end.
style,
same one,
so
so.
it
there's
is a
Seth
mishmash,
here,
mess
and
of different things, so we were thinking of trying to get it uniform.
On your side of the property line,
Yeah,
or
or
bringing it over
they
onto
all
your side.
seemed willing to put one
Put in.
fence up and, so. But just so you, if you think about it when you walk by, you wanna look at it and let's,
Because we know that
Yeah.
would be a part of
just
your
so it's in your
approvals.
mind's eye, I guess.
I don't have any
Lovely.
problem with that fence, it's all over the place, that style.
Well,
Thank you.
thank
Sure.
you.
All right.
Yes.
Wow, good night.
Yeah.
Boy,
Yeah.
9:25.
In bed at night.
Al, how, after the secret thing's all set and we're moving forward with this, how soon would we need to start having public hearings?
Well,
Or
I
a
think,
public hearing?
tentative, when we hear that part three is ready, then we, will submit that to AKRF, who will review it for us. We will have a special meeting to go over the part three.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that at the meeting we'll decide whatever changes need to be made to it, and then we can probably, vote to go to public hearing. And I think that, we would then schedule, after that meeting, we would schedule a public hearing, where, the project would be presented to the public, for their comments.
And that would be for,
Secret.
okay. Okay,
So you need a
so that
public
wouldn't be
hearing.
the public hearing to vote on,
Certificate of appropriateness, no.
so during that meeting, would it be, I guess my question is, how much of the planned design should be presented during that meeting?
Well, I think that what we see so far is enough to indicate what, what it's gonna be replaced with.
Okay,
If
so it's appropriate to show as much design as
right, and
they would like to
with the,
show.
right, with the idea that whatever the mitigation that is approved, that becomes the basis for our discussions on certificate of appropriateness.
Okay.
So I have a question about the necessity of a public hearing for the SECRA, because I had a long EAF, full EAF application for 2 Depot Square, and that was all done, reviewed, and
I think that, we're talking about, I mean, typically we have public hearings on properties for, or they're on projects which are significant changes, which this is, or the
She's talking about
projects
a
which
hearing
are,
for secret though.
I know, but
Or
I mean,
like-
still it's the
Likely to be
same,
controversial in any way.
right.
We would tend to have, even if it's a very minor adjustments to a property. Yeah, but this, because it's new construction and it's a large mass, we'd have a public hearing on it in any case.
So
Right,
does
it's-
that mean there's no public hearing for the demolition and reconstruction, or
No,
so
that-
there would be three?
Yeah. The secret, essentially what we would be voting on for a negative declaration is what the mitigation is for the impacts that were identified. So, and my feeling is that if there is something controversial, and certainly this thing started out as being controversial, I think it's best to have a public hearing so that if there are any doubts, the public can hear all of the thought processes that went into what was finally decided. It's easier that way. It cuts off a lot of, sort of grumblings and mumblings.
I certainly understand that logic, yeah, and I only ask because it seemed from our first meeting with John and Ashley and also their follow-up emails, they seem to imply that part 2 and 3 and a determination could be done in one night, so.
Why don't we confirm it with John?
Part 2,
So when I emailed recently and
Right.
CC'd everyone asking for clarifications about, I forget exactly what, and they both responded that, I asked when part 2 would be adopted, and they said that part 2 and 3 and a determination could all happen in one.
yeah, I mean, part 1 is you filling out the application. Part 2 is essentially our document saying that these are the impacts that we see.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like we have to vote on that. Ultimately, what we have to vote on is part 3,
Correct.
which is the mitigations to the impacts that were identified in part 2.
Right, and it just sounded from their emails that could potentially happen in one night, the review, when we all are together, and the vote. So if that's not the case, if a
Well,
public hearing is necessary, I mean, I understand the logic, but if it's,
Yeah, I think, and so what you're saying is that the review of the part 3 and the vote could happen the same night. Theoretically, yes, but I think that in this particular case, in order to head off, issues of public misperception, or a lack of faith in the process, it's better to have a public hearing. Anybody who has any questions about it can come in and state whatever they want to state, and it's all very transparent.
But you could do that in the same night. Just like when we have a public hearing for other projects, we hear the application, we open the floor to comment, we close the comment, we talk among ourselves, and we take a vote.
Right.
So the only
But-
thing that would change that is
but-
if someone came in and said on the part 3, for example, this element is not mitigated by X decision, I would like to see the board consider Y, and we say, wait, maybe we should consider that, let's take a little more time.
Okay.
Right?
But the issue is that the next time that we would meet with them is when we're reviewing the proposed part 3. And so at that meeting is when we would have to vote to go to a public hearing.
That's what I'm talking about. I thought you were saying after that,
No.
you're saying, okay,
or it could be, you could vote, like, let's say we submit our part 3, AKF reviews it, and they say, okay, we've reviewed it, we're now ready to discuss it as a group. At that point, couldn't you say, okay, we're gonna make that all happen one night, a public hearing, and that review so that we don't have to do the review as a group and then wait another 2 weeks because we have to send out notices for a public hearing. You know, I basically,
Yeah,
what you
so-
just said, like combine that all in one night, like if the public is sitting here for 2 hours while we're all discussing it, that's okay with us, if it means it's not adding another couple weeks. And like you said, you could always reserve the right to
Table it.
continue it or ask for more information, but it would potentially save us
Because
a
we could
few
vote to
more
go to
weeks.
public hearing during a meeting. I mean, we don't have to have a meeting with AKRF during which we vote to go to public hearing based on it. So as long as AKRF has, you know, potentially by the 10th of January has said that they have what they need to review part 3 with us, we could vote to schedule the public hearing and review for the same day at that meeting.
Right. And so theoretically, January 10th, even if we haven't gotten anything from AKRF, we can vote to go to a public hearing, if that's what we wanted to do.
Right, yeah.
And, I mean, once we have a public hearing and you're reviewing the part 3, then you should be able to take a vote on the seeker status, or that, whether it's a negative declaration or not. So,
But aren't we going to determine whether it's a negative declaration during the public hearing? Or after the public hearing?
After the
the
public
public
makes
hearing.
comment.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So
here-
should we all then plan then that on January 10th we're going to vote to go to public hearing, I guess is the question?
Well, I would think
As long as everything's
if
been-
Glenn is almost done with the part 3, then we should be able to get that, and we can talk to AKRF and see if they have an objection, because there's no reason for them to come in, and they can sort of brief us in front of the public, and then we can open it for public
The only
comment.
question I would have, only because I just don't know what seeker guidelines require on this issue, is does the part 3 need to be made available for public review for X days before it is voted on? That I don't know, I mean, that's a question for John.
Well, I mean, we can do that when we schedule a public hearing. Then the part 3 obviously has been completed, and we can
Oh,
leave
all right,
it.
yeah, yeah.
We can leave it in the
Village hall
village
for people to
hall and say, you know, and that'll be part of the notice.
And it'll be submitted electronically as well, right? So it can be posted on the village website.
Right.
Under our section.
Okay, so as long as we don't have to schedule an additional voting session just to vote to go to public hearing, I'm
Right.
cool with that.
Thank you.
That's
Plus,
what
you've
I'm
also,
trying to
you've also been
avoid.
waiting a long time, so
Yeah.
we can streamline.
Yeah, and sorry, just following this all the way through, because when we were going through our initial review with AKRF, and they kind of letting us know that things can be, secret can be reopened, I believe, like if there were a change, for example, to the project that
Right.
you felt was significant, you could reopen secret. If that were the case, could that also be done, like if during the course of our public hearings for the demolition and new construction, if there were public comment that warranted more review,
Or some
could
modification to
that
the plan.
suffice versus a public hearing? Like, I'm just wondering, like, again, I just wanna confirm that we need a public hearing for the secret, so if you could confirm that with John.
I don't have to confirm with John. I want a public hearing.
I've never heard of not having a public hearing on a type 1 modification, so.
I had a project right down the road that
Well,
had
so
to
let's-
take
so
one,
let's
which
confirm
didn't,
it.
so that's all.
Oh, you were with
But
planning.
no,
I
wait a
don't
minute, wait a
I
minute,
don't
wait.
believe it's required under the law, I think it's optional.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I think what Al is saying is that in this case, we wanna do that.
I want to do that, because basically, like I said, if there are comments from the public, we should hear them as soon as possible, so that it can be incorporated, rather than wait until later on.
That's true.
And, you know, they raise the issue, and now all of a sudden we have to reopen the secret process. I don't want to do that. I want to resolve the issue that evening.
But will the comments that we are hearing from the public be limited to the secret application?
Yes,
Well, the
Or
secret,
is it just gonna be
that's the,
Pretty
that's the subject of the,
all-encompassing.
that's the subject of the,
crazy insanity, people talking about whatever they wanna talk
well,
about?
any public hearing, you're always gonna get some comments.
Yeah.
And it's us as a board, we have to decide what to take into consideration and what not.
well, you also, as chair, have the opportunity to say, this
How
isn't
much
germane to the conversation, to the topic on the
Right.
table, so if it's not germane comment, and you make it clear at the beginning that what's under consideration this evening is the secret application, the EAF.
Okay.
You know, you're making me think, and I just would like to throw something out, because we did have some public comment at our first meeting, which turned out to be, from my investigation, not completely accurate. So just because someone has a concern, how do you know that it's true? It's
Well-
just an idea I'm throwing out there, you know.
I mean, I think that we will take public comment. We can also, the board members then have the option of asking you guys questions. And I think that if there is something which you really feel is important that should be stated, then I'll give you an opportunity to state that. I mean, you know, it's what the public hearing, the intention is to get as many, you know, as
No,
mu-
I agree wholeheartedly with your idea that let's just put it all out there and find out whatever concerns there are and deal with it now instead of when we're underway with something and.
Well, also recognize that public comment is one piece of what we
Mhm.
consider, and it's not, it can't lawfully be the thing that a decision is decided. We have to weigh this on the merits of the application.
Right.
So
Mhm.
public comment is an element, but it's not the deciding factor.
Right, yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, you could have public comment that would derail every project if it were the only
Oh,
thing we
yeah.
considered.
No, and I'm a
Yeah.
public who likes to have her say, so I'm.
All right then, let's do it.
You're a public
And just so you
commentator?
know, my questions weren't because I'm afraid of public comment.
Yeah,
I
of course.
welcome that. It's
Yeah.
more, I'm just thinking of the timing and trying to
I'm
move
also
things
s-
forward. So I'm not trying to, eliminate, the opportunity.
Well, it's
for
a
public
reasonable
comment.
question, given your experience at I'm surprised, the experience at 2 Depot.
Right, I
but-
mean, I know that was a very minor application in
By
comparison
comparison.
to this, but that just kind of like, one day I showed up and they said, oh, that's been done. It was kind of all behind the scenes, so that's why I asked.
So
And that was also a type one?
It was because it's in the national district.
the planning board determined that it was type 1, we called it type 2. So
Alright.
that, is that a
Question
question
of-
that you're asking John?
No,
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 not,
we're
okay.
gonna have a public hearing
Okay,
and,
I
So-
understand, I just had to,
Good,
That's the question.
cover all the bases.
okay.
Thank you.
see you soon.
Okay.
Okay.
January 10th.
Everyone
Thank
have
you
a nice
again.
holiday.
Oh, yes,
Happy
Happy New Year.
holidays.
Good holidays.
Okay, so we have 2 applications, we need to vote to go back into, make a motion to go back into voting session.
We'll have a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. We have 2 applications where the applicant cannot attend. One is 191 Main Street. Did I set it there? No. I'll get all that stuff put back in first.
There you go. Sean,
Yeah.
you're gonna hang on to that?
No, you can put it in there.
Okay.
So, what do I do with Peter Farrell's folder?
Yeah, how about 191?
I'm looking for it.
126.
So Peter Farrell wants
Oh,
to put
okay,
it
and
in
that
my,
also goes in 126.
And 124?
well, we'll come back to that. That's a longer one. Longer discussion. What the heck? Correspondence, 66 Main, 95 Main, we want one, oh, here it is, 191. So Peter, you'll recall, is the corner house that usually has the creepy babies at Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to put, his property line is a little wacky. It goes, there's the recessed backyard, and then I didn't realize that paved parking area,
Yeah, that's it.
beyond it is his, not the brick building next door. He wants to put a shed up there, sort of roughly where that, can you, on the second page, you can see where it's drawn
The second
out.
page where it's,
And he did put in cut sheets for the shed. It's a pre-made, it's a prefab shed. Al's got the rest of it.
did this also get referred to planning?
I don't know, Al's got it in his hand. I thought that it got referred to ZBA. What's it say on the referral?
Just us.
Why would you think it would get referred to planning?
Cause I think he's right on the property line.
Yeah.
And for a shed
Well-
that's permanently installed, I think you treat it just like a garage, you have setbacks.
Yeah.
Well, but it looks like he's only having it go,
Oh, well, let's look at the
if it's
site
drawn, if
plan.
it's accurate to how he has it drawn.
He's got a site plan in
Oh,
there,
yes.
Does?
in there somewhere, right there.
Yep.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, except
Wow.
corner lots have 2 front yards. This much I know.
The barn is 10 by 14.
And he's calling it out, I mean, the 20-foot rear yard setback, and he's got the barn in the rear setback.
Yeah. You see, basically, this is the front yard setback, because remember, corner lots have 2 front
Yeah.
yards, right?
Mhm.
He's got the thing entirely within the setbacks.
Right.
And it's, we can look at the design of the barn, but, I don't know where he's gonna put it.
He had originally talked about putting it down in the lower yard, and there he had a lot coverage issue, as I recall, and so he talked to the zoning board about that.
This we're not approving this barn. Did you see the picture of it?
I haven't seen it yet.
The
I just saw
the
that
one
it's
that's
there.
circled?
Yeah.
No, we're not approving this barn.
I will say this, before I even knew that this was on the docket for today, I was walking back from the grocery store the other day and I thought, how weird is it that at like the, one of the main entrances to the village, you can just see into the back of everyone's yards.
Well,
And it's
that's,
such a strange thing. So it's a very weird thing. I would be very encouraging of putting some sort of a garage structure on the end of this driveway. I think it would cut down the sight line into all these people's backyards, which is not just to their benefit for privacy, but also it cleans up that whole street facade. Just not that one.
Yeah, he just has to go to ZBA,
well, go to ZBA and come in, let's give him some clear feedback on what you're interested in design.
I think
Well-
the
I mean, a Dutch gambrel roof,
I'm thinking about the one we approved, the shed we approved at the library, which was, and also the clothing drop
that was-
at, across the street.
right,
They were prefab barns, but we asked them to be board and batten, to be gable roof, and those 2 sheds have sort of disappeared into the background. This
The
is
Quaker
totally,
this
one
Quaker guy over
is
here,
better,
yeah.
and it's the same size.
And it's pretty similar to both, the libraries and St. Mary's.
yeah, and it rests in the roof lines that are exposed there, the existing roof lines all around.
Mhm.
But I don't know if you wanna say to him, I don't think you're suggesting that you say, yes, do the Quaker one tonight, you're saying this is what we're inclined toward, we have
Yeah.
concerns about setbacks.
Yeah, because where he's gonna put it, I don't know.
I mean, I don't have concerns about setbacks because that is not my responsibility.
I
Yeah, but it's a
know,
waste
but-
of
but
our
if you
time
take a
to
look at-
approve something that can't be built.
If you take a look at the sliver of area that is not in a setback,
Right, but I'm saying as far as how putting a structure here affects the streetscape in the district, I'm not motivated by the lines of the setbacks. I frankly don't care. So, as long as you can get approval from ZBA to put something there in that spot, then we can take a look at it.
Was there a structure, I haven't looked at the Sanborns in this
There
area
must
for a
have
while,
been.
was there,
Well, I don't know, maybe not. It seems so,
That
it's
waterway.
very weird that like you'd have this
The
area.
water thing goes underneath here.
right, but it was above ground, right, here?
It wasn't really, no, it was in a ditch originally. Well, it wasn't even originally because that whole thing is completely
Modified
man-made.
something.
Mm.
You know, that whole channel between Academy and Chestnut is.
So sort of right behind this is where it goes under, right?
Yeah, it goes underneath here. It
That's
goes
what the
underneath his.
canoes
That's what the canoes for, that's right.
Alright, so what do we need to do?
I would say that we don't like the idea of the Dutch barn, but that something like the Quaker barn could be an option, and conceptually we can say whether we are into it or not into it, but that we can't really pursue it further until he gets the zoning variance sorted.
Could I advocate for something slightly different?
What?
What?
Which is,
That he actually builds something that matches his house.
no,
Oh.
no, it's gonna be obvious, this is, no.
That he builds it underground.
No, I'm just thinking about, I'm wondering if the carriage style above, the carriage style barn above, not the one with the cast stone, but the wooden one, if that doesn't,
I think that's a
Sit-
good one, except that's 10 by 20, not 10 by 14.
Yeah.
The other thing too is he is proposing, the way that he has it drawn on his site plan,
Mhm.
which I just lost my
it's
copy.
orienting it the other way.
He's orienting it the other way, so we're really only gonna be looking at the
The side.
vented side of it.
Well, and that does give me concern on Chestnut, that we have the side of a building fronting that dominant sidewalk, that dominant vista right across from St. Mary's.
Mhm.
I feel like we're showing the backside end.
He's gotta find a different place to put it, so.
Well, I think
in
he's
which
explored,
case it'll be oriented the
or
other way,
reorient it.
probably.
Yeah, I think he can just, I mean, if he has to get a variance anyway, then can he just turn it around?
so that the doors swing out onto Chestnut.
Mhm.
I mean,
That the doors face Chestnut.
Yeah.
So the doors
Yeah.
face the end of the driveway.
No, basically, in the picture here, the 10 by 14 Quaker, I have no problems with it except, modify the doors and windows and that's it.
modify the doors and windows to what?
To something that's more appropriate.
Like what? Let's give him specific.
Does he really need windows in the barn, in the shed?
Well, he's not asking for them. He's asking for the Dutch barn.
Which has no windows, that's right.
Oh, it has small windows.
Does it?
They're dark. It's hard to see them.
Yeah, they're also in the front.
I don't mind the windows. What I'm concerned about is
Yeah.
the orientation to Chestnut Street.
Well, I agree. I mean, to me, looking at the site plan, I would put it someplace along this lot line.
Where the canoe is right now.
I don't know where to.
Well, here, the canoe is here.
That is where it's going.
That's where it's going, but he's orienting it this way rather than this way. He's orienting it so that the side faces
so
the
he's-
street.
His 10 is this way and his 14 is this way.
Right there on your site plan. It's marked on the site
Which
plan.
is also
Well, I
not,
see the site plan, I'm just looking for the picture.
Here, I've got two.
it's not really smart to do it that way if he's planning on parking a car. He's aligning it in such a way so that if you're in the house looking back towards it, the doors presumably open towards the house. which
But
would
remember-
make sense if it were not
It'd
a
make
corner
sense
lot.
if
you know?
was not a huge drop in elevation.
Well, that's the other thing too. So are the doors facing the next door neighbor? It's just a weird way of orienting the building,
See,
unless.
because where he has this landscape here, right now he's got a bunch of rocks going down into his sunken backyard.
Oh, but
Okay.
wait, he's looking at. Hold on.
His house is right here.
His house is here, Main Street is here, this is Chestnut along here.
Yeah.
This is Lila Gold's house.
But look at what he
Formerly.
actually has circled.
Yeah,
It's got the door on the
It
end.
has the door on the end. So maybe if we read this thing, you may have the option of 10 by 14 Dutch barn.
are these, I don't think these are the same companies.
The barn raiser.
Oh. Shed.
It's the same names. Mini barn, Dutch barn, A-frame, Quaker.
I guess they are the same.
Well, I still think that in this prominent location on Chestnut Street, it is strange to have a
An
long,
oblong.
an
building.
oblong building on that parcel.
Well, look, then we get back to him and say, no, go to ZBA and see where you can cite this thing. in the
Or can
first
you
place.
orient it the other way?
Well, even if he orients it the other way, I mean, he has,
He has very few choices about where he can put it on this
Yeah.
lot, because this lot is a very difficult lot, it's a wedge-shaped lot to begin with.
Yes,
And secondly, it's, part of it is sunken down.
I know, that's why all I'm asking is to be able to put it across the wide portion instead of going to this way.
Can we?
He doesn't have
But he
space
can
below.
he can only do that if ZBA says you can put it there.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, is go to the ZBA and ask for a variance to put it that way, so that it fits
Okay,
in with the
fine.
streetscape.
Okay, are we beating this horse to death?
Well, it seems like we're not done.
I still don't understand what we're actually going to tell him to do. Do we want to talk to him?
well, okay.
Will you
Here-
relay our interest?
Here's what I am hearing right now. The Dutch barn is not acceptable as far as the shape, the Quaker is. But we are not going to act on this until he has gotten clearance from the ZBA that he can put something back there.
Okay, and what do we do about the fact that the clerk did not refer it? Oh, this is Bill Bajarski, this is an old referral.
Oh,
Well,
So we need to bring it to the clerk's attention and the
and by
building
the way,
inspectors.
that old referral needed ZBA too.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm saying, oh, it's Bill Bajarski,
Yeah.
okay.
How old is it?
April 2017. And you know what? This is the second time that Bajarski did this with this guy, where he didn't refer him to the ZBA and it caused him all sorts of trouble. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah,
The addition on the back.
Oh, yeah.
He's not gonna be happy about this.
oh, yeah.
It's not that, really, truly not that complicated. So Dutch barn, roof line not acceptable, Quaker is, orientation is a question. Are you writing to Peter or am I?
yeah.
Okay.
It would be nice if it had some sort of relation to the building.
Well, but because of the way it drops off, it can't. He did
Well-
originally have it, on his original not original, but his earlier application for the addition, he had the shed down in the lower lot, sort of right here at the base.
Hmm.
And it became, the ZBA had concerns about lot coverage, so he pulled the application, and
No,
now
he
he's
had-
coming up
He
here.
had, what he had there was a plastic shed sitting there.
Oh no, I meant it should relate to the main building in terms of material and.
Well, it's brick. The house is brick, with a wooden addition on the back.
Well,
You can
he's
put a little
he's got a
brick
20
line
gauge
foundation on it.
painted metal roof. If I remember correctly, doesn't his house have a tin roof?
The back addition does, I don't know about the main building.
Well, the back
Are the
addition
pictures
does because there was, he
Yes,
has a
I believe
porch.
it does, I believe it does.
And he has a porch that has it. I don't know about his main roof, but I know that.
No, it's not the main roof, I think it's the porch part. The, no, the porch is actually open, so it's
Right.
it's actually that extension that he built onto it.
The kitchen addition.
Yeah, the kitchen addition. The,
Does it say on that spec sheet what the actual material is of these things are made of? Oh, I have one here, sorry. White pine.
Well, it's not plastic. That's a plus.
You can upgrade to 6-light wood sash windows instead of.
Oh, here, 28 gauge, 40-year painted metal roof.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what he's got an arrow to.
Arrow?
On
An
this,
arrow.
this
He's
one,
pointing.
this one right here,
Oh, it's not
Under-
circled on mine.
under standard features. Oh, did you write that? Somebody wrote it.
I didn't.
Not me.
This is the original, the color copy. Okay, so there we go. All right, let's move on. We're
Okay.
tabling it, right? I moved to
Yep.
table until we get further information from the applicant. So move.
But I'm not into it.
I'm not into it either, it's just getting it right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm
And in
moving,
fact, I'm actually really into something going in that end of that driveway.
moving to table. Somebody second it.
I will second tabling it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now, the next one is, I'm gonna put this one back in, I'm gonna take this copy with me. So this one just came in, it got referred the other day. 66 Main, where Gallery 66 was, is now the general store.
where Salmagundi used to be,
Where Merritt Bookstore used to be.
Salmagundi before that.
Since we have to review these in 3 days anyway, I called Craig before the meeting to ask some questions, so I know a little bit more than what's here. We have the
Because he
Jeff
know
didn't print the
everything about
referral, but we
materials.
have the referral. We have the referral electronically. Let me double check.
It looks good in there.
Let me just make sure. I'm pretty sure the referral is here. I've got one. I've got Andrea's sign here. I think it's here. I think it's
Yeah, right
electronic. Hang on.
It's here, it's here.
Oh, it's there? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so he's put forward a few options. He would like to both put plywood over this, painted to say, over the Gallery 66 sign, painted to say general store like this, same size lettering, I believe.
Great.
And then he wants to use a metal bracket that gets
Mhm.
drilled back into the mortar, which I think we need to be specific about. A 24-inch bracket that has a wooden sign, a painted wooden sign, he said
Mhm.
plywood again, that has their logo on it,
Painted.
painted.
And it's a 2-foot sign,
And
But
it's
it's-
8 feet off the ground.
but it's over, according to Jeff, it's over land owned by the building owner so that the, size,
The projection is not a problem.
yes.
Right.
Unless we think 24 inches is too big. Oh. 20 by 20. The sign is 20 by 20 on a 2-foot.
24-inch bracket, a metal bracket.
20 inches?
20 by
20
20.
inches.
Somebody has the copy that I took notes on when I was talking with him.
So it's painted wood, so it's a painted wood sort of frieze, which what's there now?
What's there
Gallery
now is a
66.
slide vinyl over,
But, so you're saying they're gonna take off the vinyl, they're gonna repaint the existing wood, and then they're gonna paint general store onto it. So they're not adding layers of,
no, what he
Yeah.
said that he would like to have an additional piece of wood,
oh, an additional piece
which
of
gets
wood.
added on the frieze, screwed back into the frieze, that has the words general store painted on it, to sort of overlay this section, so it protrudes a bit, it's gonna protrude the depth of the plywood.
Why?
because that's what he is asking to do. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't simply take off the letters, paint it, and paint it directly onto the building.
onto the building.
I'm not
Now,
opposed to that.
the letters that are there, they're vinyl letters, are they stuck on the letters or what?
We can walk across the street and look.
They're
I
not there
believe that
anymore. He took them
you
off.
took them off?
Yeah.
I believe that they were vinyl because there was some consternation when they were approved that that vinyl was being applied to the frieze, not the window.
Okay, so if he's taking them off, then essentially he's painting it and lettering the new sign on the existing.
That's not what he's asking. If that's what we would like to recommend, we can. What he said tonight is plywood. Somebody's got my copy with the notes on it.
Well,
from
here
my
he says our
conversation.
sign will be flush to the building with no protrusion, see example A.
I think it's one of the things where, you know,
Your notes aren't on my copy. I don't
it would be good if the applicant was here, because then you can answer the question, we can mark up.
This, another copy?
Oh, okay, so I think that the reason why they're doing it he wants to do it with what he's referring to
No, this one is
as
not
gold
like that.
leaf lettering.
That one?
Mhm.
This one's
And
So
not-
it might be something that has to be done,
not
Yeah.
in place.
yeah.
Oh, your notes are on this one.
So they might need to have it done in a studio and then apply, and then, heat sealed or something and applied to the building. Flat lettering, hand painted gold leaf, maybe it's carved even?
He didn't say carving.
No,
Yeah,
it
that
didn't say
sounds
carving,
weird.
he says it's flat.
He said painted, I have my notes right here, painted plywood. Put plywood over the location where the sign is now,
Okay.
and
But are you
that,
sure that that piece now is not plywood? Is that what he's
I don't know what the
referring to?
material is.
Well, we
What
can
he
look at
said
it.
was, he would take a piece of plywood about the size of the Gallery 66 sign.
Mhm.
That would be painted with his logo, per this single line, and that piece of plywood would be screwed back into the cornice. So if we have concerns about that and want to recommend something else, then we should ask him.
Well,
to
I
think.
guess, the question that I would have is,
Countersunk metal screws.
all right, but I mean, obviously now this is gonna project above it. I mean, is it gonna be something noticeable, like, 3/4 inch ply or 5/8? You would see that as a raised portion, so is it gonna be just a straight board, or are there gonna be any,
Is it gonna have a
edge be-
trim?
Yeah.
Right.
And
does
does it
the
have
edge-
any shape to the ends or?
It just, yeah, I mean, but I think even a step ahead of that, conceptually, I think putting a piece of wood on a wood frieze is weird, because I'm concerned that it's going to really mess with, number one, it's going to really exaggerate the asymmetry of the
Mhm.
signage, because it's not gonna be this continuous plane with the sign painted on it, it's gonna be, you're adding depth to it, and also, because he has all these great brackets, like, how is that going to interrupt the rhythm of the brackets by having it so close to a piece of wood? I think it's gonna have to take an additional
Discussion.
discussion.
I don't see the point of not painting it directly on the frieze
I don't
myself,
see the, I
unless
don't
it's
see it
material.
either, unless, but obviously there's some reason why they're not doing it. So either it needs to be done in a studio setting by somebody who does this, or there's something messed up about that frieze itself. I don't know, I mean, maybe it's not, is the material not flush? Is it too rough to paint on directly? Why did Gallery 66 put vinyl on it instead of painting it? Is it because
I don't remember.
it's,
Well, and certainly with vinyl letters, you can get them and apply them onto something which is already there, whereas painting it would require a certain level of
Yeah.
control.
scale?
So,
All right, how about sign B?
The blade sign I'm totally fine with.
I'm fine with the Blaine sign.
I love blade signs, and I feel like our village is doing itself a disservice by not allowing it.
I guess the question I would have.
No, it's not, it's like, I could go either way.
This is the lettering that will go on, he has it listed as a separate example, but this is the lettering that would go on the plywood to be applied in this location.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then the next sign is the bracket sign, the hanging sign.
Okay, but he's not centering it in the space, the general store sign. He's having it over to one side, just over the two windows.
Yeah.
That is what he said, it would be in the location where the Gallery 66 sign is now, which is strange looking.
Well,
I think it's strange.
I don't think
Well-
I don't think it's strange.
well, you talking about the,
This one, we're talking about
the
this.
board sign or the blade sign?
The board sign.
I'm talking about the board sign, the free sign.
Yeah, I think that the board sign, certainly the board would make more, would visually make more sense if it's separate from the frieze. Because the fascia of the frieze.
Mm-hmm.
Because then the signage relates to the windows. Or you can make it relate to the window. In other words, if you had a board which came out like that, lined up with, the edges of the window, then at least it'll read as a sign for these windows. So, as opposed to if you paint it on,
But I think if you
on the
painted it
existing-
on, I think if you centered the letters over the two storefront windows and painted them directly onto and painted them on, you'd have the same effect. And it would seem less, I think it would seem less strange without there being anything, okay, so number one, the storefront's asymmetrical because you have two windows and then a door, and the door is offset. So we're already dealing with weirdness. Without dividing that frieze board somehow, it seems very strange to just add this layer of this extra
But
layer
see-
of wood to it.
But see, that, the board in and of itself, divides the space on the frieze into
Two parts.
two parts, yeah, but not equal, but then, there's nothing equal about the storefront.
But it looks like a more purposeful sign that way.
Right.
Well, then the question becomes, how are you gonna edge this plywood,
Right.
right? How are you gonna finish the edge of a piece of plywood? Is it just gonna be a rectangle? Is it meant to be rough, meant to look rough? I mean, I doubt it with Craig, but I don't understand how it is finished.
And how are the edges treated? Is it a straight rectangle? Does it have a certain
Okay,
detail?
well, we can't answer any of this without him here, so let's,
The blade sign, the one thing about the blade sign is that he is calling for it to be 8 foot. Now, is that the bottom of the sign? The reason I ask a question, according to ADA, you can't have any signage lower than 6'8".
well, it looks like on his last page, he has marked remember this is a step here, up off the sidewalk?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like,
It's 8 foot.
the impression I take is that from here to the bottom of the sign
Yeah,
is 8 feet.
I think the big X signifies the
Signage.
volume of the sign itself, not where it's going in.
I think I know why he's got it off-center. It's because of that damn air conditioning.
I know,
the way
that's
it's
what
attached.
my eye keeps coming to that air conditioner.
Yeah, I know, that keeps coming
No,
back.
I totally understand why it's off center, and I have no beef with it being off center. I just think that it's the addition of a slab of wood makes it strange.
So, what do you wanna do?
I'd be comfortable approving the blade sign now and just saying that we need to get some more information about the sign.
I'm okay with that too.
What is the blade sign made of?
What?
It's wood, again, he said plywood, painted plywood.
Does he know the difference?
Between plywood and what?
And just a piece of wood,
I don't know.
slab of wood.
What's the
One would
difference between
hope, but I
plywood
don't
and
know.
what?
That
I
one's
mean-
one's a manufactured product and one is actual wood.
Yeah.
But I mean, as it pertains to a sign, wouldn't we,
It's gonna be painted anyway.
if it's gonna be painted, I think that we would probably want something that was plywood, because wouldn't that make it more rigid
No,
and less porous?
it's 20 by 20, it's not.
Do you know, he's not, do you know who's doing it? Is it Fast Signs or somebody, did you say?
Nope.
Where does he say it's plywood?
He didn't.
On the, in,
I
Phone
spoke with
call.
him
Oh.
before he came in,
Okay.
right, cause we have to review these in 3 days, so I called him to try to save us coming back in again. I called him to get more information, but clearly we don't have enough yet, so.
Well, remember, it's 3 days from a complete application.
Okay, so if we don't consider the application complete, then let's say the application isn't complete and ask him to come in. We don't wanna vote on an application that isn't complete.
but we can vote on the application as modified, and it can be modified with the material specified.
Yeah, but we still have enough questions about
I think-
attaching this thing and.
I don't have questions about the blade sign.
I'm cool
I
with
don't
the
have
As
blade
long
sign.
as we
about-
specify that it's secured into the mortar and not the brick, I'm cool with the blade sign.
Yeah.
I'm cool with the blade sign. Yeah, we could approve the blade sign, but not the other one.
But if we
And say we need to have
but-
more questions about the other one.
Uh,
But
And we need to ask the
while
questions.
approving the blade sign, we do need to specify, see there, we're writing with plywood, painted, cause that was a verbal information.
Yeah, it would have to be more. I guess my question is that we said, okay, he's gonna attach into the mortar joints. Take a look at that plate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of dinky.
Yeah, I mean, the question is that, will that span from one mortar joint to the next?
Well, that's why I was wondering who was making this thing, because when we had the conversation at Berkelman with the representative from Fast Signs,
She said.
she said everything is made to spec based on where it's being installed. So they could make a bracket that was drilled appropriately to hit 2 mortar joints. So is that an option for this, or is that, again, I think if in the C of A we say that it is applied to the mortar and cannot be drilled into the brick, that I would hope would be enough to make sure that it was attached to the mortar and not drilled into the brick.
All right, I guess.
Particularly if we are going to be having an additional conversation with him where we talk about the sign.
I guess my concern is that it's a very small base plate, right? And so the question really is that,
Is it strong enough?
is it strong enough to hold, a sign, even though the sign is not all that big,
Maybe that's why
but
he's
still,
using plywood.
by the time, whatever the thickness of the plywood is, the sign painted on both sides, we don't really know, but,
Wind shears.
right, you're gonna have wind, you're gonna perhaps have somebody who throws something up there. I mean, the sample that they're giving us looks like it's into something which is a little bit more sturdy underneath that veneer that it's showing. I'm not sure that that base plate is gonna work. I mean, and I don't wanna approve it and then, he goes to his sign guy and says, here, yeah, let's put this in. The guy goes, oh my God,
So
we
may I
can't do that.
suggest that we tell him we have tabled it, and when we compile these specific questions we would like him to be prepared to answer,
Okay.
So my
I
question to
wouldn't
you
have a
is,
problem with that.
so let's do that right now, so that we know when we're communicating with him what it is that we're saying. My question is, are we considering the application complete or incomplete?
Incomplete.
Sean?
I don't know why he's putting the blades, well, he really should be putting the blades out over by the door, right?
Mhm.
I think it's the air conditioner. Everybody doesn't wanna draw attention to that air conditioner. Alright, so list off the questions that you want.
It's a great reason, isn't it?
So, in regards to the freeze sign, why is it being painted onto an additional board and not directly onto the frieze itself? And in the event that it must be painted onto a board, how are the edges of the board being finished?
How thick is the
How
board?
thick is the board? What's the profile of the sides of it?
How thick, profile of edges, what else?
Just treatment and profile of edges.
Okay.
And I guess for the blade sign,
That and also, can he do a mock-up of how big, where he wants to place it on the frieze? Right?
yeah, and I guess what the total signage is, what are the dimensions of the sign itself, because I wanna know how closely it's gonna be. I wanna know how close that board's gonna be to those brackets. So, overall dimensions of the board.
Particularly how it relates to the bracket. Do you want to see, Al, when you say, can you do a mock-up, do you mean both signs
No,
or just the frieze?
I don't think we need to see a mock-up. I'd like to see a drawing of what he's proposing.
I mean, do you want to see a representation of the blade sign as well as, instead of an X on the page, do you wanna see the blade sign as it relates to the facade, or do you just wanna see the frieze sign mocked up, drawn up?
I'd like to see the frieze sign drawn up. I think I have a fairly good idea as far as the blade sign goes.
Okay.
My question is that, can the base plate be modified so that it'll hold up his proposed sign?
So that it fits so it's secured in a mortar joint, so that it can be secured in mortar joint and carries the weight of the sign. Okay, what else? Anything else?
Yeah, the material, the thickness of the board for the blade sign, and is it two-sided or one-sided?
Meaning, does it have the logo on both sides?
Mhm.
I imagine it's gonna be two-sided, but, so what's the point of hanging a blank one on a
Yeah, and
merchant
that
street?
and also, how is it actually hung from the brackets?
So he said that it would be just like this example with the chain.
Okay, and how's the chain attached to the board?
So if you go,
Looks like it's drilled into the top.
And it depends on how thick it is on the top.
right,
Yeah.
you may need to,
Yeah, probably clamps of some sort.
okay,
So
anything
we
else?
suppose, and without actually knowing.
So then the question is, no, because we're not considering it complete, it's not complete until that information comes in, so we don't have to rush back in for the 3-day. Okay, thank you.
Now, the 3-day, according to the law, is he can put up the sign for 3 days, but we still have the right to review. And if we reject
It doesn't have anything to do with him putting it up for 3 days. If we don't
No,
review
no,
it in
no,
3
no,
days,
no.
he can put it up,
he can put it
but
up.
then we still held the right.
We still have the right to reject what he's put up.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's not complete yet anyway, so.
Right. Well, the thing is that I don't feel a pressing need to do it in 3 days, because ultimately we get to review it one way or another.
Well, I would rather not have someone invest the time and money in making a sign and putting it up and then having to take it down because we weren't. That would just be a pain.
At their beck and call?
Well, we're at the beck and call because the village didn't comply with the court order. So, sorry, we are dealing with what the trustees didn't do. I think the village should go back and advocate to have that injunction raised.
I agree, So, what's next?
There is.
Board business.
And any word on how the meeting went with the site visit today?
I haven't heard from anybody.
I haven't really- But our site visit is on
Sunday.
Sunday, 11:30.
Sunday at 11:30.
So what's the status update on the Boulevard and,
The Boulevard, we're having a little trouble finding a date for them to go out to the site with Tom Patasek. Patachek. And, there is no conflict with the archaeologist, he's an independent contractor. And sometimes these guys work together and sometimes they don't.
so it's a matter of getting we're waiting for the archaeologist to have access so that they're, what?
What I
Their
want,
part
I
one is
want,
completed?
I want their archaeologist and our archaeologist to get together and discuss the scope that they agree upon, what basically their plan of
I
action
see.
is. So that, he can produce some sort of report, because our archaeologist is saying, well, I can't do anything until I see his report. Because the stuff that Scenic Hudson supplied from several years ago
Right.
is not germane, because it was not talking about a
Right,
building
new
project.
construction, right.
It was just sort of a fast, once over.
Is this
it's
archaeology
one
going to
little-
occur before we're under
Oh, they
18
have,
inches of snow?
they have no problems, they said 18 inches of snow is no problem, we can dig,
Okay.
as long as we know where we're going. And the other thing was that, in addition to everything else, about a week ago, we got a new set of site plans from Beatty and Watson, because I pointed out that their first one was drawn wrong, and, yeah, that's what it is. I've got them electronically, which have been transmitted to the Nelson Pope Voorhees team. And, one thing, they had the old edition still on it, and then they added the new edition on top of the old edition, which is not what they intended. And so everything was off about 20 feet as to where their
That's a
driveway.
not a small,
No, not a small thing. I just had such glee, being
Sure,
able to
I'm
tell Beatty and
too
Watson,
sure that you
"Oh,
did."
by the way, your plans are lousy, they're wrong."
so this
Anyway.
is the revised drawing here.
These are the revised drawings, but then they also made a decision that they're not going to have an independent driveway, that they're going to use a common driveway with Scenic Hudson.
Right, which we talked about the last time we saw them in
And
person.
Scenic Hudson's cool with that?
Yeah, cause basically, Scenic Hudson's driveway is on their property, is on
Scenic
the
Hudson has
Sutton's.
an easement to, that
Oh,
road
right.
belongs
Scenic
to
Hudson
them.
only has an easement on their
Okay.
property.
Here, go ahead, I'll get mine on here.
The other thing is that since this is a National Register property, have we put material up on Chris for Shippo to take a look at?
I gave everything to
Jeff?
Jeff to do so.
Okay.
So that just needs to be confirmed that he did it?
Yeah, I need to confirm that, that's true.
Okay. I'm gonna stick, everybody has a copy and is taking it home, or I'm gonna
I'm
send the
not
rest
taking,
in?
I'm not taking a copy home because I have the electronic one.
Okay. All right, so is there
I've
anything
got
else we need to
some-
talk about with
some-
35, or?
Some rooms to wallpaper.
I got these great maps. I was at the State Museum on Thanksgiving, and they sell, in the gift shop, they just sell all of these old geological maps from the various environmental departments, but these two really cool painted maps of the lower Hudson Valley.
Oh, neat. Is there anything else we need to talk about, 35 or 20, the Boulevard, 35 Market?
No.
Okay, so, we have, bills from AKRF. and a note from the, well, we have several of them. No, this is John first, this is the lawyer's fee bills, and these are the bills from AKRF. You need to be comfortable with the billing so it can be paid out of escrow. I haven't looked at them.
Do I need to sign off on it? Like I
On that
see-
one you do, that's the voucher, but these have to be reviewed
All right,
straight up.
$2,000. How much is the escrow?
Didn't you ask for $5,000 apiece?
Hmm?
Didn't you ask $5,000 apiece on the escrows?
Yeah, something like that. Okay, anybody have any heartburn with okay, so with Sigler Henderson, $600,
This is John's bill.
John's bill, with Karen Park, $1,600. See if there's
Because
any.
we're further along in process with them, right? He came and sat through that meeting with AKRF.
Mhm.
Right.
Doesn't seem unreasonable, he's $175 an hour.
Cheap.
Well, I think he's sorry he negotiated that rate. How many hours are there?
Well,
1,600, it's less than 10.
yeah, it looks $185 an hour.
185. That doesn't seem out of the range of reasonable, given what he did, given the
Well,
time he spent. He's also, it's gotta be responses to emails in there, right?
4 hours at $92.50 per hour, and then 6.6 hours at $185 an hour.
I'm sorry, what?
He probably has a different rate if he's working from the office or working on site.
Could be.
Cause he doesn't have like a paralegal, does he, or anybody that we talk to other than him?
He does have a junior that does work. Like when we had a contract reviewed last year, it was a junior.
It's a
Member of the
multi-lawyer
firm.
firm.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, basically 3.2 hours for Sigler Henderson, and 11 hours for, no, not 1.1 hours at $0 an hour. I guess he's writing off some time. .2 hours,
He's a lawyer, that's what they do.
I know. Gee. All right, does anybody have any objection to the
I'm not
time?
even exactly sure,
Are you comfortable with the scope of work he describes in the actions?
In his bill?
Yes. Oh, the items that he says he spent 0.2 hours on, or would, is there anything that
Telephone
jumps out as?
conversation with applicant's architect, review of correspondence from architect. So that's a telephone conversation with Karen. How do I verify that?
Sure. You can't, I don't think that you can verify them, I'm just saying, is it within the range
does it
of
seem
reasonable?
realistic?
Please, it's 10:30!
Is it within the range of reasonable?
For the amount of time you think our village attorney spent, do you think that he is maliciously billing the village for this, or billing the applicant? If you don't, then I think we're good.
Honestly, I think he deserves every penny,
I think he deserves every penny.
potentially a holiday fruit basket.
Well, okay, let me ask you this. Review of HDRB application materials, analysis of village's historic district regulations as they pertain to this application. Preparation of draft notice and intent, okay, that. Alright. I will take a look at it and,
Just, okay.
just sign, just sign.
I'm saying go, but why don't we, can we
Just
vote to
not with
approve?
red ink.
Not with red ink, with blue, with the blue or
Do we
black
need
ink.
to vote to approve, or can you do that as chair?
I have done that as chair before, so,
Okay, sign it, let's be done with it,
alright,
get the mandate.
next, continue on
That's
while I
it.
read.
That's what we have right now, is looking at these bills.
Okay,
Looking
I'll
at
take care.
AKRF and,
Now, the AKRF, I guess, if you could take a look at it, and I guess he needs to prepare a voucher sheet for that.
I haven't worked with AKRF, I don't know what hours they spent.
Well, and, you were at the meetings, right? Were you not?
Can we not just look at them right now and get it done?
Get what done? I don't have a cover sheet to sign, a vouchers sheet to
No,
sign.
pass it on to the treasurer for her to prepare a voucher.
Okay,
It was
Then-
just
then
in
let us-
our box as correspondence.
okay, then, this is from Ashley, and, the labor is 2,271, and this is for $126 Main Street. $2,341.
What was the escrow for 126 me?
Well,
I think
It
it
was
was, I think it was $5,000 for each one.
So that would mean that we're about
And
halfway
there's a
through?
second bill here. With $1,300. This is 35 Market Street.
That seems accurate.
Do we have the contract?
Do I have it in my hand? No, but we have a contract with them. Yes, the village attorney.
I know, but I mean, will the village accountant verify the rates that she's looking at?
If you write a note to her that says, please verify rates against contract.
So the country touch, packing it in.
You know, what happens at grandma's stays at grandma's,
I think it's what happens on the porch stays at the
or
porch.
whatever.
It's a really nice space. Have you been in there?
What
Ever?
is today's date?
Candles overwhelming.
13.
13th?
It's like a pretty good sized storefront, and she has like the second room with like a big skylight in it.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It's really weird because it doesn't look at all like the Solomon's Mine side of the building. I mean, they're totally different depths.
Mm. So this also goes back to the treasurer, now she can pay.
Mhm.
The other piece of correspondence, I think maybe old correspondence that got recycled back into our folder, it's the cultural artifacts notes from Paul Henderson and the Code Update Committee. We
Oh.
had an exchange with him on that, yes?
Yeah, we talked to him about that.
It looks to me like to be the old exchange.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have any minutes because Andrea's not here. And I saw some come from Thomas to Andrea, but I didn't see them again checked by her. Is that right?
I didn't see that from her.
You, Thomas, you have recently sent minutes to Andrea? Okay, so they're outstanding from her end then. 124 Main, we need to talk about. So, there is now, where there was a wooden door going up to the upstairs, you'll recall that Al was the one who remembered this. He had originally in his plans proposed door changes and then withdrew the
Not-
signage.
Not the front, he had proposed changes, he was gonna put a metal door in the back.
Right,
The
but he had
fire
also at one point brought in cut sheets for a wooden door
Mm-hmm.
for that front. And he withdrew it when we asked about the signs, he withdrew all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is a sign on the front of the facade which is small enough to be passable, according to the code inspector. But there is a fiberglass insulated door on the staircase. And when I walked past recently, I said to him, "You changed the door." And he said, "It's a fire door. It's a fire door." So he came. We communicated to Jeff that this was not a door we had reviewed. Jeff wrote the letter saying this is not a door that's been reviewed. You need to deal with it. He came in today at the end of the day and asked Jeff what it is that he should do next. Does he need to make a new application? Is it a revised application? At base, we have a door that's doesn't meet standards in that portion of the district. So I don't know how to handle this, but I think it has to be, this is a continuing problem at this property. And if we're gonna have another side exposed.
The way we handle it is that he has to come in and submit an application for what he wants to do on the
A
door.
new application.
A new application.
And I think in doing so, we should also tell him the door that he's installed is wholly insufficient. And
Don't say that.
but I don't
But
want.
it's not,
don't
it's not
s-
standard compliant.
But I don't want him
No,
to come in with
no,
just a
no,
cut
no.
sheet for the door that's already there, and then we have to tell him to come back again in a month. Sorry.
You're prejudging his application.
I am.
No, he's trying to
I'm
save the
making
applicant time.
educated, yes.
But
Having-
that's not our job to save the applicant time. If the applicant is, is uninformed enough to submit what he knows, and he's been through the process
Yes, that's
before, he
true.
knows the process, if he feels that this is what he wants, then let him submit that, and we'll take a look at it and we'll say, no, this is not acceptable.
That's such a waste of time.
No, it isn't.
Can,
What,
I would
what
propose
what
saying
was
this
the
to
issue
him.
that you were raising?
That he has installed a door.
That he is a continual problem. The only way that you're going to get the message across to him is not by making the process easy for him, making him toe the line.
It doesn't matter if it's easy or hard.
I'm making it easy for me, and I think what we should say to him is, this door is non-compliant. Please prepare an application
for a door
for a
that is.
replacement door,
I know,
and we will review it at our next
I know.
meeting.
But then, what you are opening yourself up to is for prejudging an application before you've even seen it.
But it's a
No,
simple
I'm just
fact that
telling
What do you
you-
know about this door?
it's a fiberglass
I've
door
seen
that's
it.
not allowable in the
Okay.
district, in that portion of the
I
district.
haven't seen it because I haven't gone over to take a look.
Well, you could see it if you were.
Standing here.
Okay.
looking up.
Yeah. I mean, it's
All right.
practically the neon
I-
light
I-
of doors.
I have no particular urgency in making his life easier or simplifying the process for him.
We're not talking about him. We're talking about us having to deal with this
We
over
have-
and over
we have-
again.
I know, but we have to come here on a regular basis anyway, so.
Okay, but all I'm saying is, I think there's, to simply say to him,
Why don't you do it as a private citizen, go over there and say, by the way, we don't like this door.
It's not, we don't like this door.
Kathleen
This is
already
a,
did do
no, I
that.
didn't. I said you changed the door.
I agree.
Period. You changed the door. And then the
That
clerk
needs-
communicated to him
That
that
he
you have
needs,
changed the
he
door without a
needs to,
permit.
he needs to submit an application for review.
I do not want to leave him with the impression, like Sean, I do not want to leave this person with the impression that the door he has installed is going to stay there.
Okay, well, then you can speak to him separately. As a board, we should not be prejudging applications or.
We're not prejudging. The door's installed.
I
but
know.
but it's also, we are issuing him, we are asking him to make a correction to a building in the same way that if somebody if somebody threw up, if over a weekend, somebody threw up a door on a historic house that was non-compliant, we wouldn't say, oh, you got a new door.
Make
We
an
would say,
application for that.
this door is, you have a non-conforming door, please submit an application to the board. You're telling them why you're,
And that's, and everything that you said there was fine, up to that point.
please submit an
But
application to the
the-
board for a compliant door. These are our standards.
Well, okay, but the thing is that,
And
you-
please refer to the standards, that's it.
the thing is that you can sit there and say, you installed a door without getting approval. That is not allowed, you have to submit an application.
And P.S. The door you've installed is not compliant with the existing standards. This is not rocket science.
And it's not an
All
issue
right,
of,
I
I don't want to give him the, I don't want to misrepresent our intentions, which is like, this is just a bureaucratic
Right,
thing where we
exactly.
need to go through the motions of approving your door that you've
Then you
already.
can have that conversation on the side. It's just that there are certain things that you don't want put in paper to open yourself up for prejudging, anything before you've actually seen the information.
Can I hear from Carolyn, please? I'm interested to
I
what
would
your
just add
perspective
sentence
is.
like, please refer to design standards,
I have no problem with that.
period.
Please
Okay.
refer to design standards to identify a door that complies with them.
No, just please
No.
refer to design standards, period.
But I don't think that it's contrary to our mission to tell him that the door that he has there needs to be replaced. That is the purpose of having him come before the board, is because.
Purpose for him coming before the board is because he installed a door without getting permission. And that is not, he's not allowed to do that.
Well, it's two things.
And it's
He
not
installed a non-compliant door.
Okay,
without getting-
okay, and we can
So
very.
it's two things, he didn't apply and it's non-compliant. It's not just the one or the other, it's both of them.
As far as the process, it's that he didn't apply. The fact that the door didn't comply, I am not going to say anything about that until I see what the door is. If he wants to submit that same door, then, that's his prerogative.
And he
And
probably
if you
will.
want to go
And he
over and
probably
talk to
will.
him and say,
He
Jimmy,
probably- And he probably will submit the same door.
well, then I have no problem with sending him a very quick session. Fiberglass, I'm sorry, Jimmy, that's not allowed. And sending him away.
Fine,
Okay, are we done?
fine.
Then we go another month with an ugly door on the street.
I'm just afraid that the longer it
Kill
sits
us.
there, the more likely it is to stay.
Well, then at some point, what we do is, what the code allows for is that he gets,
And notice to remedy.
right, notice to
So-
remedy, he gets violated, we start hitting him with fines.
Well, why don't we
Yeah, we
issue
don't
the-
even have a fine schedule.
Why don't we
in our-
issue the notice to
Yes, we
remedy right
do.
now?
We
Why
don't
do we have to
schedule
wait?
of fines,
I
do
am
we?
unclear
Yes,
on
we
that
do.
as well.
There's a certain fine amount every day of the non-compliance.
Al, I am unclear on that as well. Why, we need to sit down with the building inspector, because I don't know why this wouldn't be a notice to remedy. And
Well,
not
it should.
simply a courtesy letter.
Well, the courtesy letter is because there was nothing on the application which indicated that he was going to replace the door. So the question is that what's going on? Now, if he says, well, I had to replace it because it's a fire door, then, it should be a
Then the
notice.
building inspector should have said to him, oh, you need to replace it because it's a fire door, you need to get your
Except-
fire door approved by the HDRB. We have a
That's
disconnect
right,
here.
that's right. And what we should do
Is there
is,
such a thing as a fiberglass fire door?
I don't think there is.
I don't think so either.
As a matter of fact, I think if I remember correctly, what he was talking about in the back was a fiberglass door. When we said, no, that's not acceptable, and then he said, okay, I'll install one like the front. So I think what he did was, oh, they'll never notice, let me put fiberglass door in the back
They'll
and fiberglass in the front.
never notice.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's
that
true.
brings us to our next topic of discussion. Doesn't need to be a long one, but we clearly need to work some kinks out in communication with the building inspector.
Yes.
Dave suggests that we sit down after the holidays.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
And the one thing which became obvious is that if we are pointing out something to the building inspector for him to follow up, we should be very precise about what it is.
Super precise, and in fact, I think it may be time to reconsider the format of the C of A so that the cover has, like a monkey can read how it.
No, no, and I'll tell you why, because basically, you're gonna cover everything that you can think of, but when we were reviewing the Kapoor's application, did we ever think, well, first of all, I would like to see the Kapoor's, because I do remember it mentioned, and I thought it was on the sheet somewhere.
Well, ask Jeff for the file. I don't have the file.
Okay, is the file back there, or here?
If it's not here, you can go check.
Is all of our stuff back from Scanning Village?
I don't know. I assume that most of it is back. Why don't we ask our clerk?
Is our stuff back from being scanned?
That I know of, no.
Because you are not gonna think of every single thing that is.
No, but I'm guessing that there are probably ways, we're never gonna think of everything, but I'm guessing that there are probably ways that we can improve the cover sheet, which would indicate in slightly more detail that you should lift off the cover sheet and see cut sheets.
Well,
Lift off the cover sheet.
The cover sheet right now says, facade renovation as shown on the, in the attached drawings.
Yeah, I'm
What
grabbing
more
that
do you
up.
need?
Well,
Lift up
no,
cover sheet?
No, maybe you need to say attached drawings, drawing A3, A4, A5, and cut sheets numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Installation of a new freestanding, this is a simple one, so it's not.
Okay, well, that's the wood sign.
I just think we shouldn't shut down the possibility of improving this document
Well,
before
can-
we even
I'm
entertain the
I'm-
option.
I'm not shutting it down, but the thing is that we deal with drawings and notes on drawings. I have been, it's changed over the time. Bill Bajarski wanted to have all sorts of stuff added to the, to the text
The text
about
map.
the building permit.
Text map.
We added that. We added, the routing numbers and stuff like that. But I think that aside from,
Who are these people?
It's probably old stationery.
Well,
that Alan has.
those are dead people.
Yeah.
Well, except for you.
Well, then I ought to tell Peter Downey that he's dead.
That's pretty far back.
Yeah.
I think that there could be I'm purely just throwing this out there as a potential way of bridging the gap between what we have now and what the future could hold for us all. Could we identify the 12 most common things that we give these certificates of appropriateness out for, and have a block where you check off everything that's pertaining to the project, and if it's not checked off, people don't have to look for it. And then at least that way, somebody looks at it, and if it
They have a
says,
short list.
and if the description is total renovation of old building, then they know that we addressed windows and siding and a door, and they don't need to be looking for information about whatever else. There's no signage on the building.
It's pretty clear that the code enforcement officer is pressed, and the district is a pain in his backside.
Right.
So anything that we can do to simplify and help him identify what he needs to be looking for faster would be great.
Well, I think that the sense I got from the Kapoors is the fact that, you had gone to him and said, the windows were wrong, right? What was the complaint that you said to him,
There were two issues. One was that they were to stop when they exposed the historic siding and come on in and have a conversation about leaving the historic siding on the primary facade exposed and different from the rest of the structure. They
Okay,
did not stop, they kept going. I contacted the building inspector when that was exposed and said, what's going on? They're sheathing the rest of the building, they're supposed to come in and have a conversation. The other issue was that the windows, in my recollection, the windows on the second floor of the primary facade were to be the same size as the windows on the first floor. They are smaller, and it was clear that they were packed out to fit in smaller windows. So, the
But-
issue was, I don't have time to look at these things, you need to pull the file. Guess what? I'm not paid. I'm not gonna come in and check the file every time. It's your job as code compliance officer, you were supposed to check the file. So, there wasn't an exchange about that, but there was with Jeff the question of who does that. In my opinion, I can't give any more time to come down here and pull files and go to the building inspector and show him what to look at. That's his job.
right, well, and basically, he doesn't especially wanna do that.
I guess, but
Okay.
it's not gonna work for the district. So if we want to improve inspections and we want to up our likelihood for compliance with the decisions we make and not waste our time, then we need to have a conversation about how we can make things easier for him. Cause he's the one we've got, so either we decide we're gonna make it work or we're not.
Well, and, I mean, the issue more than anything else is that, he is not going to drive around the village looking for things which A, either did not get approved, or B, is being installed not as per the approved C of A. Now, I don't care how detailed you make it, if he doesn't look at it, he is not going to take the time.
There is that, but there is also the aspect that you have a reviewing member, which is what we've done for years. You have a reviewing member looking at it and say, that's not what we approved. So we contact the building inspector and say, this is in process, that's not what we approved. The building inspector goes to the file. He doesn't know in his head, or she doesn't know in her head what's supposed to be there, but they look at the drawings and they look at the C of A and they go to the property owner or the contractor and say, hold on, this isn't what was approved, you're gonna need to come back in. That piece, if he's not open to accepting information that something isn't in compliance, how are we gonna do that? We have to have a vehicle for saying to him, this isn't what we approved. And the answer can't be, you volunteers come in from your work day and pull the file and tell me what I need to do. That's his job.
Okay, I think that what we need to do is we need to dig out the kapors, because I do remember.
It's not, we're
Let
done
me-
with the
let me
Kapoors,
finish.
but
Let
Al's
me-
not,
Let me finish.
Dave's not gonna go
Get-
anywhere with it.
Let me
Yep, go ahead.
Let me finish my thought.
Yep, sorry.
Because I do recall that issue was discussed as far as the front facade. The window, I don't recall, but the front facade, I do remember that being an issue, and I remember that being marked on the drawing somehow. So for them to say, because, for them to say that they couldn't find it surprised me.
It surprised me very much. Because, and we also had it was a point of conversation with the applicant.
Right. Well, and my experience over the years with applicants is that they'll tell us anything that we want to hear.
So when we're in that situation, regardless of whether the windows
Yeah.
were, it's entirely possible that my memory is wrong. We would look at a bazillion properties.
Right.
Regardless, this is an illustration of a problem we need to address, which is how are we going to raise the issue of compliance, and how is it resolved? Because so far the answer has been, I don't have time from the building inspector and from the clerk. The building inspector has other things to deal with. Then why am I here? If we're not gonna be following up when our C of As aren't complied with, it's a waste of everybody's time.
So, the question is that how do we get somebody to take a look? That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I was asking Jeff and referring things to Warner for months on the neon signs, and nothing happened. Absolutely zero.
Because it's not a priority for Jeff, and he's been very clear about that. That it is, there are so many other things that the building inspector needs to deal with, I'm not gonna bother him with that. I'd like to write letters, excuse me. If he wrote the kind of letter that he wrote to Jimmy for the neon signs, that'd be great. We need to all the parties need to be at a table making a decision for how things go forward. I can't, we have, sorry.
You have what?
Well, we have getting calls from Dave, pulling the file, and Dave going through and saying, I'm not seeing it, I'm not gonna have the building inspector go back there. Well, is that how that works? I don't think so.
Well, the question really is that, again, I remember that being noted on the drawings, and so I guess the question is what happened to that note? And that's what are the files supposed to be?
You can go look, I haven't looked.
All right, I'm gonna go take a look.
Can we close this meeting, please? It's
Yes.
almost 11 o'clock.
Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.